Chapter 1261. The stone tablet with a chipped corner that Zhou Yi took out was none other than the Devilseal tablet. Previously, he had betrayed his master, Martial Emperor Shiqi, and lost Stone Forest for the sake of the secret hidden in the Devilseal tablet. However, until now, he could not find other uses for it apart from the fact that it could be used as a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. Junior brother Zhou, I admire you. At this moment, Lan Bai raised a thumb up toward Zhou Yi as she mused, if I were you, I wouldn't have rejected the quasi-royal grade spirit weapon master gave me even if I already have a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. The crowd present on the scene agreed with Lan Bai's words. Even Martial Emperor Lei Ming's eyes were filled with satisfaction when he looked at Zhou Yi. Right now, do you still think Zhou Yi will leave my Thundercloud Peak after receiving the quasi-royal grade spirit weapon? Martial Emperor Lei Ming asked as he looked at the two direct disciples casually. The moment both of the direct disciples heard this, they merely lowered their heads and smiled wryly. They could not refute at all. They did not think Zhou Yi would be this vicious. He actually refused a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon that was given to him. Quasi-royal grade spirit weapons were priceless on Cloud Continent. Nobody would think that having more was too much. The fact was nobody in the group, including Martial Emperor Lei Ming, actually understood Zhou Yi's real thoughts. He did this not because he was righteous or anything. The reason he did this was to leave a good impression on Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Just in case he happened to meet Martial Emperor Shiqi on Hidden Fog Island, Martial Emperor Lei Ming would protect him. He did not have to be afraid anymore since he would be under Martial Emperor Lei Ming's protection. I'll need to make a sacrifice so that I can benefit from it later. This was currently how Zhou Yi reassured himself inwardly. It would be fake if he said he did not find it a pity to give up the quasi-royal grade spirit sword just like that. Let's go, Martial Emperor Lei Ming yelled as a tremendous invisible energy surged out of his body. He led the 10 people, including Zhou Yi and Lan Bai, north. Their destination was the overseas Saint Island far in the middle of the sea at the north of the Cloud Continent, the Hidden Fog Island. At a place far away, at the southeast of Thundercloud Peak. Whoosh, 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 silhouettes of figures that were faster than lightning flashed across the sky. The wind and mist were dispersed at the places they passed through, only merging together again after a long time. The destination of these figures was the north of the inner land, also the north of Cloud Continent. There were a total of 11 figures. The leader was a young man. When he flew, it seemed as though he had transformed into a gigantic sword. Under his leadership, the 10 people following him also seemed to have transformed into gigantic swords. The gigantic sword pierced through the sky at a speed so fast that it was terrifying. Snap! A crisp sound resonated in the air. Duan Lingtian noticed that the exquisite jade box in his hand had opened, revealing a gap. At this moment, Duan Lingtian fell into a daze. He still remembered how he had tried with all his might to open this exquisite jade box many times in the past. However, all his efforts had been in vain. At that time, he had even used his spirit weapon. However, it did not yield any results. At this moment, without any spirit weapon and origin energy, he managed to open the exquisite jade box easily just with the strength of his 2 profundities. The moment the exquisite jade box opened, he instantly attracted the leader's attention. It was Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Ling Zan. Brother Ling Tian, this is. I think it's something my father left me, Duan Ling Tian answered. This was also a small part of his memory that he recently recovered. Why you remember your origin? Yang Hui's eyes brightened up instantly when he heard Duan Ling Tian's words. No, Duan Ling Tian shook his head. I only managed to recover a small part of my memory. I just happen to remember this thing and its origin, as for the others, I still can't recall anything. When he reached the end of his sentence, he frowned. It seemed as though he was trying to recall his memory, but it was all in vain. I see. Yang Wei finally understood. When he saw Duan Lingtian trying to recall his memory, he did not ask anything more in fear that he would affect Duan Lingtian's emotion again. I still can't recall anything. Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart. Although he had recalled the origin of the exquisite jade box in his hand and knew that it was left behind by his miserly father, his memory of his miserly father was still very vague. He could not recall anything at all. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. In the end, it still yielded no result. Perhaps, it's like what Bastard has said. All I need is time, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. In the last 6 months, his memory had been recovering, and he could recall many things that he could not remember previously. This left him no choice but to believe Wang Ba's words. According to Wang Ba, he only needed slightly more than a year at most to recover all of his memory. According to the memory that I recently recovered, this jade box seems to contain something my miserly father left behind. Moreover, it seems to be very important. Duan Lingtian opened the exquisite jade box curiously, the contents of the exquisite jade box fully revealed to him. There was a jade piece lying quietly inside the exquisite jade box. It was none other than a voice transmission jade slip. Apart from the voice transmission jade slip, there was another jade slip that was slightly thicker. Upon closer inspection, it did not look like a jade slip. It looked more like a jade token. Other than the voice transmission jade slip and jade token, there was nothing else inside the exquisite jade box. What's this? Duan Lingtian was confused when he saw the jade token. There was no record of such thing in the memory he regained. Perhaps, the answer lies with the memory that I had lost. Duan Lingtian was not certain he would recognize what this jade token was even if he regained all his memory. Soon after, Duan Lingtoin took the voice transmission jade slip out. He still remembered what a voice transmission jade slip was. This must be a message left behind by my miserly father. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted as he inserted his origin energy into the voice transmission jade slip, causing it to blink faintly before it let out a dazzling light. At once, a seemingly familiar voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears clearly. Tianer, when you open the exquisite jade box and take this voice transmission jade slip out, I believe that your cultivation base must have already made a breakthrough to the innate void restoration stage. Innate void restoration stage? Duan Lingtian was stunned. If it was in the past, he might not know what innate void restoration stage meant. However, ever since Wang Ba explained it to him, he knew the innate void restoration stage was equivalent to the martial emperor stage on Cloud Continent. How did my miserly father know about the innate void restoration stage? Duan Lingtian was baffled. Because Duan Lingtian had lost part of his memory, he did not know his father had brought his mother and another 3 girls away from Cloud Continent and went to a faraway place that might possibly be the Dao Martial Saint Land. According to Bastard, the innate void restoration stage seems to be the way of calling in that Dao Martial Saint Land or something, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. The voice transmission jade slip continued to transmit the seemingly familiar voice. The innate void restoration stage is the martial emperor stage on Cloud Continent. A first-rate martial emperor can be considered as standing at the summit on Cloud Continent, but it can only be considered as the summit of the mortal stage in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Due to this reason, you can't be too proud of yourself. I'm sure you must be filled with curiosity and have a lot of questions about the Dao Martial Saint Land, so I'll give you a brief explanation about it now. The Dao Martial Saint Land is another continent in this world. Like Cloud Continent, this place has a rule of the jungle where the strong rules. However, Cloud Continent's martial emperors are not considered powerhouses at all here. In the Dao Martial Saint Land, the peak of the mortal stage is the innate void restoration stage. After you've entered the innate void restoration stage, you must cultivate all the way to the peak of the innate stage before you can truly transform. Using a common expression, this transformation is called mortal shedding. The mortal shedding stage comes after the innate void restoration stage. Once you've entered the mortal shedding stage, then only can you be considered as truly entering the threshold of becoming a powerhouse in the Dao Martial Saint Land. The Saint Rudiment stage comes after the mortal shedding stage. This is actually what the saying, transcending worldliness and entering the sainthood, means. The stage that comes after the Saint Rudiment stage is the Saint stage. In the Dao Martial Saint Land, the mortal shedding stage can be considered as entering the threshold of being a powerhouse, but those people who are commonly known as powerhouses are all above the saint stage. Right now, you must know the meaning of these 9 words: there are humans beyond humans, and heavens beyond heavens, right? Compared to the Dao Martial Saint Land, Cloud Continent is merely a mortal continent. The seemingly familiar voice continued to enter Duan Lingtian's ears, introducing to him the other world, the Dao Martial Saint Land. Previously, he had heard some things about the Dao Martial Saint Land from Wang Ba. Due to this reason, he was not completely surprised. Although he was not surprised, his heart was filled with a longing for the Dao Martial Saint Land. There are many places in the Dao Martial Saint Land that are different from Cloud Continent, For example, there are only martial cultivators on Cloud Continent, but in the Tao martial Saint Land, in addition to martial cultivators, they have Tao cultivators and even devil cultivators too. Moreover, no matter how strong a person is, he wouldn't be able to mobilize the heaven and earth energy and gather it into the heaven and earth phenomenon in the Tao martial Saint Land. Apart from that, the Saint grade martial tactic in the Tao martial Saint Land is the authentic skills and techniques. No matter how strong the martial skills on Cloud Continent are, they are only vassals to the energy. On Cloud Continent, even without using any martial skill, as long as you're powerful enough, you can defeat those who are weaker than you even if they have cultivated heaven rank martial skills. However, such a situation won't happen in the Tao martial Saint Land. To sum it up, the Tao martial Saint Land is a place filled with many marvels. I didn't bring you along with me when I left Cloud Continent is because I wish that you'll stay on Cloud Continent to train so it'll be easier for you to gain a foothold in the Tao martial Saint Land in the future. I hope that you'll understand my good intention. Please don't blame your father. Chapter 1262. The seemingly familiar voice continued to enter Duan Ling Tian's ears, giving him a rough introduction on the Tao martial Saint Land. There were some parts that left him confused. After hearing my miserly father's words, it seems like he purposely didn't bring me to the Tao martial Saint Land. And the reason he did that is so that I can train here. Duan Ling Tian was perplexed. Since he had lost his memory, he did not know when his father had left Cloud Continent. Moreover, he had also realized one extremely horrifying thing. Although he knew he had a miserly father, he could not remember anything else about him like how he looked like and so on. Soon after, the seemingly familiar voice continued to speak again. Since you've made a breakthrough to the innate void restoration stage, then you have the ability to cultivate the Saint grade martial tactic. I left behind a set of Saint grade martial tactic for you, and I hope that it'll be beneficial to you. I won't continue saying unnecessary words. I've already arranged for someone to meet you. When you arrive at the Tao martial Saint Land, go look for this guy, and he'll bring you to me. He's at. The voice came to a halt without any warning as it reached here as though it had been cut off. Duan Ling Tian could tell the voice was indeed cut off abruptly. What's going on? The voice being cut off at the most crucial moment caused Duan Ling Tian's face to turn grave immediately. At the same time, he lifted the voice transmission jade slip in his hand and carefully studied it. Soon after, he noticed there were a few unnoticeable cracks on the voice transmission jade slip. Don't tell me that the cracks on the voice transmission jade slip were caused when I forcefully tried to open it last time. Duan Ling Tian easily guessed the reason. The inside of the exquisite jade box was made of incredibly hard jade. If the things inside it were violently shaken, it would definitely incur some damage. How great! Father said he has already arranged for someone to bring me to him when I arrive at the Tao martial Saint Land. However, a problem arises in the most crucial part. I don't even know where he asked his man to stand by. Since I don't know where his man is, I won't be able to meet with the man he has arranged for me to meet and he won't be able to bring me to meet father. Duan Ling Tian's face turned gloomy as a wry smile crept up on his mouth. Looks like even after I arrive at the Tao martial Saint Land, I won't be able to meet that miserly father of mine immediately. The moment he thought of this, the wry smile on his face became even more apparent. However, Duan Ling Tian very quickly returned to his old self. He knew very well that since things had progressed in this direction, there was nothing he could do no matter how hard he thought about it. Father said, he left behind a set of Saint grade martial tactic for me. After Duan Ling Tian regained his senses, he put the voice transmission jade slip away before he shifted his attention to the exquisite jade box again. Other than the voice transmission jade slip, there was only a thick jade token inside the exquisite jade box. This is the Saint grade martial tactic father left for me. Duan Ling Tian fell into a daze when he looked at the jade token. However, he quickly snapped back to reality. Then, he took the jade token out of the exquisite jade box and infused his origin energy into it in an attempt to explore its profound secret. However, his origin energy did not resonate with the jade token at all. Don't tell me it's because my cultivation base is not high enough that I can't read the information stored inside. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. He could roughly guess that the set of Saint grade martial tactic that was mentioned in the message his father left behind in the voice transmission jade slip was stored in this jade token. After using his origin energy, Duan Ling Tian tried to infuse his spiritual energy into the jade token again. Boom! As soon as Duan Lingtian's spiritual energy came in contact with the jade token, a continuous stream of complicated messages rushed into his mind and became part of his memory. The messages seemed to have etched itself on his mind that it was impossible for him to forget it. This is the saint-grade martial tactic. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted after he skimmed through the messages inside the jade token. These messages were a set of martial skill that dominated other heaven-rank advanced martial skills. Naturally, martial skill was what Cloud Continent called it. In the Dao martial saint land, it was called the saint-grade martial tactic. It was greatly beneficial to a martial cultivator, and it could be considered as a powerful part of a martial cultivator's strength. Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. Soon after, Duan Lingtian learned the name of the saint-grade martial tactic. He also learned this was a set of long-range offensive saint-grade martial tactic. Apart from having an innate void restoration stage cultivation base, cultivating this set of saint-grade martial tactic requires me to have a set of bow and arrows that are at the saint weapon grade. Duan Lingtian gleaned all this information from the saint-grade martial tactic Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. Saint weapon, Duan Lingtian muttered softly to himself. I wonder if the quasi-royal grade spirit weapons that are superior to grade 1 spirit weapons are considered as saint weapons or not. Bastard. Bastard. The moment he thought of this, he began to summon Wangba, or to be more precise, Wangba's soul, that took up residence in his body. You're so noisy, boy. Why are you calling me? Wangba finally responded. From his tired voice, it was obvious that he had just woken up. Wangba, what type of weapon is considered a saint weapon? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Don't you have a saint weapon yourself? Wangba snapped in irritation. Isn't that sword of yours a human rank primitive saint weapon? Moreover, that time when you relied on the Devilseal's energy to battle with that guy at the innate void restoration stage, the long spear in his hand is a human rank primitive saint weapon too. And that Devilseal tablet, that's a super saint weapon that dominates all heaven rank prominent saint weapons. Wangba finished his sentence in one breath. Human rank primitive saint weapon. Heaven rank prominent saint weapon. Duan Lingtian was stunned. He asked curiously again, what are the levels of these saint weapons? The saint weapons are divided into 3 great ranks, heaven, earth, and human. They're the heaven rank saint weapons, earth rank saint weapons, and human rank saint weapons. Among the 3, the heaven rank is the best while the human rank is the worst. The heaven, earth, and human rank are further divided into 3 grades, the primitive, mediocre, and prominent. The prominent rank is the best while the primitive is the worst. The human rank primitive saint weapons are the worst saint weapons. The heaven rank prominent saint weapons are the best ones. Of course, this doesn't include the super saint weapons of the 10 great saint weapons rankings. The super saint weapons are saint weapons that dominate all heaven rank prominent saint weapons. The Devilseal tablet is one of the super saint weapons, Wangba continued saying. Since it's a super saint weapon, why didn't you help me keep it previously? After listening to Wangba's words, Duan Lingtian began to understand more about saint weapons. However, there was something he did not understand. According to Wangba, that Devilseal tablet was supposed to be his, yet, Wangba had thrown it away instead. Humph, I told you before that I don't like it. Wangba snorted. As a devil cultivator, he would not be able to use the Devilseal tablet even if it was a super saint weapon. Not only was it useless to him, but he would be devoured by it as well. Due to this reason, the Devilseal tablet was no different from trash in his opinion. Why you threw it away, Jay, just because you don't like it? Upon hearing Wangba's words, Duan Lingtian was instantly infuriated. A good super saint weapon was gone just like that. How could he not feel infuriated? That super saint weapon was of no use to Wangba, but it was useful to him since he was not a devil cultivator. Right now, I can only wait until I regain my memory and remember where I left the Devilseal tablet. I'll go snatch it back at that time, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. The moment he thought of this, his mood took a turn for the better. According to Wangba, when he had been devilified by the Devilseal tablet previously, he had battled an innate void restoration stage martial cultivator. When he left, he did not bring the Devilseal tablet with him. An innate void restoration stage martial cultivator was also known as a martial emperor on Cloud Continent. Duan Lingtian was confident he would be able to snatch the Devilseal tablet from that martial emperor's hands. After Duan Lingtian regained his senses, he relaxed his body and allowed Yongwei, Martial Emperor Lingzan, to guide him north. At the same time, he studied the message about the colossal aerolite arrow in his mind. The colossal aerolite arrow was a set of saint-grade martial tactic. All the martial skills he had mastered could not be compared to its strength at all. Being able to shoot with great precision without missing the target every time. This was the colossal aerolite arrow. If I want to cultivate this colossal aerolite arrow, my cultivation base must make a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage first. Not only that, but I'd need to refine a set of saint-grade bow and arrows, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. According to the memory I regained, as long as I have the necessary materials, I'll be able to refine a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. The sword in my hand is a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon too. Moreover, there seems to be a spirit weapon even more powerful than the quasi-royal grade spirit weapon in my spatial ring. I think it's called the royal grade spirit sword or something. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he quietly took out a spirit sword from his spatial ring. This sword was dull without any luster, as though it had returned to its original nature. This sword had indeed returned to its original nature. It was not as simple as it looked, it was a royal grade spirit sword. When it was wielded, it would grant a 120% boost in strength. Wang Ba, can you identify the grade of this sword? Duan Lingtian asked Wang Ba again. Initially, Wang Ba's voice sounded irritated, but after he noticed the royal grade spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand, he could not help but exclaim out loud in surprise, "Boy, you're so annoying. Isn't this the human rank mediocre saint weapon? Boy, are you sure you're from the mortal continent?" Wang Ba's voice continued to resonate in his mind. His voice was filled with a trace of doubt. He had a reason for his doubt. After all, this tiny little martial cultivator from the mortal continent kept taking out items that belonged exclusively to the Dao martial saint land. Just this alone was enough to raise suspicion. Chapter 1263. It's only a human rank mediocre saint weapon. When Duan Lingtian heard the first part of Wang Ba's words, he was disappointed. It caused him to ignore the second half of Wang Ba's words. Based on the memory I've regained, I can only refine a human rank mediocre saint weapon after I've made a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage. Duan Lingtian shook his head and sighed as he looked at the royal grade spirit sword in his hands before putting it away. The quasi-royal grade spirit weapons on Cloud Continent were equivalent to the Dao martial saint land's human rank primitive saint weapons. Royal grade spirit weapons were equivalent to human grade mediocre saint weapons. Duan Lingtian immediately gained a new understanding regarding the saint weapons in Dao martial saint land. Since I can only cultivate the colossal aerolite arrow after I break through to the martial emperor stage, I guess I'll only refine a bow and arrows after I break through to the martial emperor stage. Duan Lingtian made up his mind. He wanted to craft a set of royal grade bow and arrows to cultivate the colossal aerolite arrow. Royal grade spirit weapons were human grade mediocre saint weapons, so it could be used to cultivate the colossal aerolite arrow. As time went by, Duan Lingtian stopped thinking about unnecessary things. He calmed his heart, cultivating the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique and comprehending the 2 profundities. His strength was rising with every minute and second. Although the speed of his progress was not extremely fast, the progress he made was not small with the passing of time. Apart from Duan Lingtian, the other 9 people, including the 3 martial emperor's direct disciples, Zhou Di, Song Ting, and Zhang En, were also cultivating with their eyes closed. Perhaps this was why Martial Emperor Lingzan brought the group of people to the Hidden Fog Island with his strength alone. He wanted to give them more time to cultivate and comprehend in peace so that they could improve their strength as much as possible. After all, the objective of their trip to the Hidden Fog Island was for the sake of the Hidden Fog martial competition. In the martial competition, the performance of the people he brought was linked to his and Lingzan Peak's prestige and image. Due to this reason, he could not help but feel concerned. One must admit that as a 4th-level Martial Emperor Lingzan, Yang Hui's speed was extremely fast. After only 10 days, he had already brought Duan Lingtian and the others through the northern area of the inner land on Cloud Continent that was entirely covered with snow and all the way to Ruo Shui River. Ruo Shui River encircled the inner land on Cloud Continent. It was also the divider for the inner land and the outer land on Cloud Continent. Snowflakes whirled in the sky like feathers at Ruo Shui River in the north, but the surface of Ruo Shui River was still as calm as always. It did not freeze nor was it tempestuous. With Yang Hui's speed, it only took him a few days to cross Ruo Shui River and enter the northern outer land on Cloud Continent with Duan Lingtian and the others. There was no doubt it was even colder in the northern outer land. Large snowflakes fell mercilessly and continuously. However, when it reached above the heads of the group that was led by Yang Wei, they seemed to be repelled by an invisible energy. The white snow that landed on the invisible energy was shaken away. However, white snowflakes still gathered densely together before they were shaken away. The invisible energy on the group of people looked like a huge eggshell underneath the white snow that landed on them. This was Martial Emperor Lingzan, Yang Hui's strength. His strength guided the other 10 people, including Duan Lingtian, forward. Apart from guiding them forward, this energy also blocked the wind and snow. No matter how cold and gruesome the weather was, it did not affect them at all. 2 weeks later, Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzan, brought Duan Lingtian and the other 9 to the fringe area at the north of the northern outer land on Cloud Continent. When they arrived, the snow had stopped, and the weather had turned warmer. As they hovered in the sky, the scene that entered their sight was a boundless sea that stretched out as far as their eyes could see. When they looked in the distance, the blue sea and the azure sky seemed to have merged into one. At this moment, Yang Wei deliberately decreased his speed as well. We're at the seaside now. The group of people, including Duan Lingtian, began to return to their senses. They stopped cultivating and were absorbing the sight of the ocean that stretched out as far as their eyes could see. Even a first-level martial emperor would take about 6 months to go to the Hidden Fog Island, one of the overseas Saint Islands on Cloud Continent. The words that Martial Emperor Lingzan had said previously replayed in Duan Lingtian's mind. However, Martial Emperor Lingzan's speed when he flew in Carius is a lot faster than a first-level martial emperor. I'm sure it'll only take a few months at most to reach the Hidden Fog Island, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. After the crowd glanced at the boundless sea, they immediately lost interest. The sea seemed never-changing and had no novelty, causing the crowd to quickly lose their interest. Let's continue. When Martial Emperor Lingzan, Yang Wei, saw this, he announced indifferently and continued to bring them flying to the north. He had stopped for a moment earlier to inform the others they were leaving Cloud Continent soon. At this time, under Yang Hui's guidance, the group of people officially left Cloud Continent and entered the boundless sea as they headed to their destination, the Hidden Fog Island. Master. After leaving they left Cloud Continent for a period of time. Zhang En, Yang Hui's third direct disciple, could not suppress the question he had on his mind. I heard after leaving Cloud Continent for a distance, there's a sea region that separated the overseas and Cloud Continent completely. The heaven and earth energy there is completely different from the heaven and earth energy on Cloud Continent and its surrounding sea area. The heaven and earth energy overseas world won't solidify into the heaven and earth phenomenon. Is this true? When he reached the end of his sentence, he looked at Yang Wei with bright eyes. It won't solidify and become the heaven and earth phenomenon. Upon hearing Zhang An's words, the group of people, including Zhou Di and Song Ting, shifted their attention to Yang Wei. Their eyes were also filled with curiosity. Even Duan Lingtian was currently looking at Yang Wei. According to the message in the voice transmission jade slip left by my miserly father, he only said when the martial, Dao, and devil cultivators in the Dao martial saint land attack, they won't mobilize the heaven and earth energy and gather it into the heaven and earth phenomenon. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted. However, according to Zhang En, as long as we leave Cloud Continent's sea region and arrive at the overseas world, our heaven and earth energy won't solidify into the heaven and earth phenomenon. The heaven and earth phenomenon was formed by the heaven and earth energy mobilized by the martial artists on Cloud Continent when they made their move. On Cloud Continent, anyone could tell how much strength a martial artist possessed from the heaven and earth phenomenon formed by the heaven and earth energy that was mobilized by the martial artist when he made his move. For example, it would be the strength of how many ancient mammoths, ancient horned dragons or ancient black dragons. All of these would be revealed by the heaven and earth phenomenon or the silhouettes. However, the heaven and earth phenomenon would not appear anymore once they left Cloud Continent and enter the overseas world. If that's the case, then, I guess, the heaven and earth phenomenon must be a special characteristic of Cloud Continent, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. That's right. In the face of Zhang An's query, Yang Wei nodded his head. However, there's still a distance from here to that sea region. With my speed, we'll most likely pass through the sea region after a month. Master, after a month, can you wake us up so that we can experience it for ourselves? Zhang An asked with bright eyes. Sure. Yang Wei glanced at Duan Lingtian first. He nodded his head after he saw Duan Lingtian seem to be interested as well. Zhang An's face was instantly filled with joy. The other 9 people, including Duan Lingtian, Zhou Di, and Song Ting, also had an anticipatory expression on their faces. They looked forward to the next month. Since they were born, they had lived on Cloud Continent, a place where the heaven and energy would gather into the heaven and earth phenomenon when they made their move. To them, the heaven and earth phenomenon was a part of their lives. After learning how the heaven and earth energy would not solidify into the heaven and earth phenomenon no matter what move they made after they left the sea region on Cloud Continent, all of them wanted to test it out to see if it was true. To them, everything was a rumor, and they would not be able to take it seriously if they did not try it out for themselves. During this time, 10 of them, including Duan Lingtian, cultivated their own movement techniques and comprehended their own profundities quietly so that they could raise their strength. A month quickly went by. This time, Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzan, who brought Duan Lingtian and the others along with him, began to slow down before he came to a halt. Under Yang Hui's prompt, Duan Lingtian and Zhou Di were the first two to regain their senses. Then, Zhou Di proceeded to call his two junior brothers, Song Ting and Zhang En, before Zhang En woke the remaining people up. Duan Lingtian hovered in the sky as he looked at his surroundings. The scene that entered his sight was nothing but a vast expanse of water where the sea and the sky merged. It was as though he had entered a world entirely washed in blue color. The fleecy clouds in the sky were the only accessory decorating this blue world. Whoosh! Suddenly, as though a wind had blown past, Yang Wei retracted his energy. The sea breeze immediately blew toward them, causing their robes to flutter loudly. The rich smell of the ocean wafted up their noses from the sea breeze. Master, have we left the sea region? Zhou Di asked politely as he looked at Yang Wei. Yes. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Yang Wei nodded nonchalantly. Everyone's eyes, including Duan Lingtian, brightened immediately. At the same time, origin energies skyrocketed from their bodies as though they had transformed into milky white flames that soared up into the sky. Duan Lingtian's origin energy ran rampant on his body. After a while, he raised his head to look at the sky. The sky above was completely calm. There was no movement from the heaven and earth energy at all. There really isn't any heaven and earth energy. The heaven and earth energy did not appear, let alone solidifying into the heaven and earth phenomenon. Although Duan Lingtian was mentally prepared, he could not help but feel surprised. After he withdrew his origin energy, he turned to look at the others. He discovered if it was not for his spiritual energy that could roughly probe a person's cultivation base, he would not know their cultivation base at all since their origin energy did not mobilize the heaven and earth energy and solidify into the heaven and earth phenomenon. Chapter 1264. As the saying goes, the world is so big that there's nothing to be surprised about. Once we leave Cloud Continent, we really can't see the heaven and earth phenomenon gathered by the heaven and earth energy anymore, Duan Lingtian mused to himself after he confirmed it was true. Similar to the others, he was already used to battling with the heaven and earth phenomenon by his side. Now that they had left Cloud Continent and was without the heaven and earth phenomenon, he was a little unaccustomed to it. Duan Lingtian was not the only one who felt that way. The other 9 people, including the 3 Martial Emperor's direct disciples, Zhou Di, Song Ting, and Zhang En, regained their senses. All of them were also shocked. This is too amazing. The heaven and earth energy really won't mobilize and gather into the heaven and earth phenomenon once we leave Cloud Continent and arrive at the overseas world. This means that in this overseas world, your strength won't be easily revealed no matter how strong you are since the heaven and earth phenomenon won't materialize. How peculiar. Many people whispered among themselves. They could not help but share their thoughts with each other. All 10 of them, including Duan Lingtian, were in shock for a long time. When they regained their senses, they felt as though they had entered a new world. This new world thoroughly shocked them. Soon after, Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzan, made his move once again. The tremendous invisible energy swept out and guided Duan Lingtian and the rest to move forward again. The hidden fog island of the overseas Saint Island. That was their destination this time. Their objective was to join the Hidden Fog martial competition that would be held on Hidden Fog Island. At that time, they would meet many other people like them, powerhouses who came from Cloud Continent. With our speed, how long will it take for us to reach the Hidden Fog Island? Duan Lingtian asked curiously as he looked at Martial Emperor Lingzan. About 2 months, Yang Wei replied. Upon hearing that, Duan Lingtian nodded in reply. Then, he closed his eyes once again. It appeared as though he was trying to attain mental composure, but in fact, he was already beginning to cultivate and comprehend his 2 profundities. While Duan Lingtian and the others were getting closer to the hidden fog island, the inner land of Cloud Continent was in an uproar. Originally, the commotion caused by Lingtian's sect was only at the southern part of the inner land on Cloud Continent. However, the inner land of Cloud Continent soon discovered that the ancient Han clan that had always maintained a low profile had suddenly joined in and even became Lingtian's sect's pawn. All of the powerhouses from Han clan were dispatched, and they swept through the entire inner land on Cloud Continent. In just the span of 2 to 3 months, they had made more than 80% of the first-rate forces in the inner land pledge allegiance to Lingtian's sect. Lingtian's sect's name immediately spread everywhere. Its name became famous in the entire inner land on Cloud Continent. It was no longer restricted to the southern area of the inner land. It was worth mentioning that when the Han clan's powerhouses willingly became Lingtian's sect's pawn and intimidated many first-rate forces in the inner land to submit to Lingtian's sect, another ancient clan had tried to interfere. According to that ancient clan, as a reclusive ancient clan, the Han clan should not create such a huge commotion on Cloud Continent. Many people thought the two ancient clans would go to war with each other when that ancient clan suddenly became frightened. Moreover, they even willingly became a pawn of Lingtian's sect. Lingtian's sect's fame inspired awe throughout the entire inner land on Cloud Continent. Its name even spread to the outer land at an amazing speed. There had never been such an extraordinary sect before in the history of Cloud Continent. I heard that Lingtian's sect is originally a low-level first-rate force in an inconspicuous corner in the southern area of our Cloud Continent's inner land. Moreover, they only took over the sect. It was previously a low-level first-rate force called the Yin-Yang sect. I've also heard that before. Still, I didn't expect the sect's meteoric rise. It's really terrifying. There are martial emperors and demon emperors in the two ancient clans, but they willingly became Lingtian's sect's pawns and did everything for the sect. It's just too inconceivable. I wonder why the two great ancient clans are willing to become pawns. In fact, none of the martial emperors or demon emperors on Cloud Continent could submit the two great ancient clans before. Discussions like that were common in the inner land on Cloud Continent. Everyone was interested in Lingtian's sect. Many geniuses and talented martial artists even fought to enter Lingtian's sect. The fact that Lingtian's sect could order the two great ancient clans around was enough to arouse anyone's interest. Another 2 weeks went by. This time, all of the first-rate forces active on the surface of Cloud Continent's inner land had all become Lingtian's sect's affiliated sects. Apart from having to hand over a huge number of origin stones, they needed to hand over their genius disciples as well. At the same time, Lingtian's sect moved their site to a mountain peak that was even loftier in the central area of Cloud Continent's inner land. This mountain peak was even bigger and wider than Lingtian Peak. This mountain peak was originally the site of a top-level first-rate force in Cloud Continent's inner land. Just because Han Shuinai, the acting sect leader of Lingtian's sect, had taken an interest in it, the Han clan forcibly took possession of it and presented it to Han Shuinai and Lingtian's sect. After they relocated to this new site, Han Shuinai ordered all members of Lingtian's sect to gather before she announced nonchalantly, "From now on, this will be the new Lingtian Peak." Although her voice was not loud, it was clearly heard by everyone present on the scene. At once, other than the three little fellows always by Han Shuinai's side who remained calm, the remaining people beamed with delight. They could not suppress the excitement in their hearts. When they cheered, their eyes were filled with awe when they looked at Han Shuinai. It was all because of this yellow-clad teenage girl who looked like she was only 15 or 16 years old brought three little monsters and swept through the first-rate forces in the southern area of Cloud Continent before ordering the ancient Han clan to work for them. Moreover, when the other ancient clan wanted to stop the Han clan from carrying out duties for Lingtian's sect, this teenage girl was the one who dealt with the matter. Other than rescuing the Han clan from the siege, she even made that ancient clan work for her in Lingtian's sect. Although they were not clear about what exactly happened, the result was more than enough to surprise them. Who's this sect leader's sister? Not only is she powerful, but she even has those three little fellows who are extremely powerful as well. This is still acceptable. The most terrifying thing is she managed to make the two great ancient clans on Cloud Continent work for her. This is just too mind-blowing. Many people were shocked as a myriad of thoughts filled their minds. Even Shang Quan, who knew Han Shuinai was not a simple person, did not think that she was so terrifying. She's only a little girl, but she's so powerful, I don't think anyone is stronger than her on Cloud Continent. Who's she exactly? Shang Quan was extremely curious about Han Shuinai's identity and origin. After the commotion, Ling Tian sect finally became the most powerful force on Cloud Continent. The sect was also very influential, like the sun in the mid-sky. Any force that could make the two great ancient clans work for it would make everyone tremble in fear. If it was not for the fact that most of the martial emperors and demon emperors on Cloud Continent had brought people away from Cloud Continent to the Hidden Fog Island to join the Hidden Fog martial competition, more people would have been shocked by Ling Tian sect's matter. Even the martial emperors and demon emperors were not exempted. Right now, our Ling Tian sect is standing at the summit of Cloud Continent, yet our sect's sect leader is still nowhere to be seen. Han Shuinai looked at the group of people before her as she announced, "Due to this reason, I want our main priority to be shifted to searching for our sect leader. Ling Tian sect will reward whoever helps us to find Duan Ling Tian, the sect leader of our Ling Tian sect. They'll be rewarded with 1,000 supreme grade origin stones." She continued to say, "This reward is open to the elders and disciples of our Ling Tian sect as well. 1,000 supreme grade origin stones." Upon hearing Han Shuinai's words, many people's eyes brightened right away. It was as though they could see 1,000 supreme grade origin stones waving at them. 1,000 supreme grade origin stones were enough to make most people go crazy. Apart from that, I'll let the two great ancient clans help us in our search for our Ling Tian sect leader as well, Han Shuinai continued to announce. The moment these words left Han Shuinai's mouth, many people turned anxious immediately. It was as though they feared the members from the two great ancient clans would snatch the 1,000 supreme grade origin stones away. News of Han Shuinai's reward quickly spread from Ling Tian sect. Ling Tian sect was searching for Duan Ling Tian. Whoever provided clues in their search for Duan Ling Tian would be rewarded with 1,000 supreme grade origin stones. Anyone who heard about the reward would immediately go crazy. 1,000 supreme grade origin stones. Even the top-level first-rate forces on Cloud Continent's inner land would not be able to take out so many supreme grade origin stones. One could easily imagine just how much so many supreme grade origin stones were worth. When the entire Ling Tian sect was in a frenzy searching for Duan Ling Tian, Han Shuinai temporarily left Ling Tian sect and went to the place where the two great ancient clans resided. After that, the two great ancient clans also began to dispatch their members to search for traces of Duan Ling Tian, the sect leader of Ling Tian sect. They did not dare to slack at all. Lingzan Peak was not far from where the new Ling Tian sect was located. After Martial Emperor Lingzan, the owner of Lingzan Peak, left with 10 of the most outstanding people under his command, the atmosphere in Lingzan Peak became glum and gloomy unlike before. It was only until the news of the reward from Ling Tian sect spread to Lingzan Peak that it regained its bustling atmosphere. Many Martial Emperor's disciples and followers left Lingzan Peak temporarily for the sake of the reward as well. Chapter 1265, Ling Tian Sect, Duan Ling Tian. Inside Lingzan Peak, two young men who looked identical exchanged a look. Both of them could see the astonishment and amazement in each other's eyes. The red-clad young man gulped as he looked at the blue-clad young man. He asked in a daze, "En Nangong Chen, do you think the sect leader Duan Ling Tian that Ling Tian sect is searching for is the Duan Ling Tian we know?" That period of time when Duan Ling Tian, the sect leader of Ling Tian sect, disappeared almost coincides with the time we encountered Duan Ling Tian. Moreover, he had just lost his memory when we met him that time, the cold and aloof blue-clad young man deduced. The red-clad young man gulped again. After a long time, he finally replied with much difficulty, "After hearing your deduction, it really does seem too coincidental. In this case, the sect leader Duan Ling Tian that Ling Tian sect is looking for must be the Duan Ling Tian we know." When he reached the end of his sentence, shock and disbelief were clearly written on his face. It only took Ling Tian sect a few months to sweep through all of the first-rate forces in Cloud Continent's inner land with the help of the two great ancient clans. The red-clad young man gasped before he muttered, "Isn't Duan Ling Tian's sect a little too terrifying? Although Duan Ling Tian is strong, it's still not enough to invoke fear in the two great ancient clans," the blue-clad young man chimed in. "Moreover, Duan Ling Tian has already left Lingzan Peak and Cloud Continent with Martial Emperor Lingzan. In other words, all these commotions caused by Ling Tian sect has nothing to do with Duan Ling Tian at all. No matter what, we must make a trip to Ling Tian sect. Once we confirm that the Duan Ling Tian we know is the sect leader Duan Ling Tian that Ling Tian sect is looking for, we should formally greet Ling Tian sect as well," the red-clad young man said. "Let's go." The blue-clad young man was as taciturn as always. The moment his words left his mouth, he had already disappeared from his spot. The red-clad young man quickly followed and chased after him. The twins leaving Lingzhan Peak were none other than Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi. After they left Lingzhan Peak, they headed straight toward the direction of Lingtian Peak. Lingtian sect had moved to a new place close to Lingzhan Peak. After only a few days, the Nangong twins arrived outside of Lingtian Peak. They were blocked by a few Lingtian sect's disciples who were patrolling the area. This is Lingtian sect's site. It's for authorized personnel only, the Lingtian sect's disciple leading the group said indifferently as he looked at the Nangong twins. We wish to see the current person in charge of your Lingtian sect, Nangong Yi said at a speed that was neither hurried nor slow. Not everyone is allowed to meet the acting sect leader of our Lingtian sect, the leader of the group of Lingtian sect's disciple replied. What if I said I know where Duan Lingtian is? Nangong Yi said again. Boom, Nangong Yi's words stunned the few Lingtian sect's disciples. It was as though they were struck by lightning. After a long period of time, they finally snapped back to reality. Why, you said you know our sect leader? A few Lingtian sect's disciples looked like they were in a daze. The Lingtian sect's disciple at the lead was a middle-aged man with a huge build. After hearing Nangong Yi's words, a strange light gleamed in the depth of his eyes. Humph! Suddenly, the middle-aged man's face darkened as he snorted. Ever since our Lingtian sect has announced the reward, many people came and claimed they knew the whereabouts of our sect's sect leader, however, all the news are fake. Some people said they wanted to meet the acting sect leader of our Lingtian sect, but their real intention is to join our Lingtian sect. They all have ulterior motives. You said you know where the sect leader of our Lingtian sect is, but why should we trust you? The middle-aged man asked nonchalantly when he reached the end of his sentence. As long as I meet with the current acting sect leader of your Lingtian sect, I naturally have my ways to convince him, Nangong Yi replied. On the way to Lingtian sect, they had learned more about the origin of sect leader Duan Lingtian. He was from the southern outer land of Cloud Continent. The southern outer land was there in Duan Lingtian's hometown. Due to this reason, they were convinced the sect leader Duan Lingtian and the Duan Lingtian they knew were the same people. However, they did not know what happened to him that caused him to suddenly lose his memory to the point that he could not even recall his own name. He only learned his name when he met them. Then, they journeyed to Lingzhan Peak together. In the end, although the three of them did not become the martial emperor's disciples and followers of Lingzhan Peak, their treatment in Lingzhan Peak was in no way inferior to the three martial emperor's direct disciples under martial emperor Lingzhan's command. Everything they enjoyed was all thanks to Duan Lingtian. Due to this reason, they sighed inwardly. Gold will always shine brilliantly no matter where it is. After the leader of the group of Lingtian sect's disciple, a middle-aged man with a large build, scrutinized Nangong Yi and Nangong Chen, he said nonchalantly, "Follow me then." Before he brought the Nangong twins away, the middle-aged man looked at the few Lingtian sect's disciples and ordered, "All of you, continue to patrol." Yes, the few Lingtian sect's disciples responded respectfully before they left. "Two of you, please come with me." After the middle-aged man motioned to the Nangong twins, he flew out first. However, the direction he was headed in was in the opposite direction of Lingtian Peak. Nangong Yi frowned and asked immediately, "Where are you taking us?" "You two must not know. The acting sect leader of our Lingtian sect is usually not in Lingtian Peak. She usually cultivates in a valley 500 kilometers away from the east of Lingtian Peak," the middle-aged man replied. "I see." Nangong Yi nodded before he and Nangong Chen continued following the middle-aged and headed east. However, when they reached 500 kilometers to the east, the Nangong twins realized they had entered a desert that stretched out as far as their eyes could see. When they looked at their surroundings, let alone a valley, not even a mountain could be seen. This place was completely deserted. The Nangong twins finally realized what was happening at this moment. Nangong Yi looked at the middle-aged man furiously and snapped, "Why you? You lied to us." "I didn't lie to both of you." Standing at the side, the middle-aged man glanced the Nangong twins indifferently before he said, "I'm merely carrying out my duty. I'll only bring you to our acting sect leader after I'm certain both of you truly know the whereabouts of our sect leader." Upon hearing the middle-aged man's words, Nangong Yi's face warmed. "In that case, there's no reason for you to do this. We're friends with sect leader Duan Lingtian. We're..." Nangong Yi proceeded to tell the story of how they met Duan Lingtian after he lost his memory. At the same time, he described Duan Lingtian's characteristics as well. "It really is the sect leader." The middle-aged man's eyes brightened immediately as his breath began to quicken. He looked at Nangong Yi and asked with a hint of urgency, "Where's our sect leader?" "You just have to confirm the person we know as the sect leader of your Ling Tian sect," Nangong Yi replied nonchalantly. "As for where he is, I'll tell the current acting sect leader of your Ling Tian sect when I see him." He had his guard up. He was vigilant because he had a feeling about this Ling Tian sect's disciple. "If you don't tell me, I won't bring you two to the current acting sect leader of our Ling Tian sect," the middle-aged man said as he shook his head. "Perhaps you know the missing sect leader of our Ling Tian sect, but it doesn't mean that you know where he is. I have to remind you that our acting sect leader has to attend to a myriad of affairs every day. If you're not able to tell her where the sect leader is after you see her, she might kill you in a moment of fury." "You don't have to worry about this," Nangong Yi replied confidently. When the middle-aged man saw how confident Nangong Yi was, an unnoticeable greediness rose up in the depth of his eyes. However, he maintained his calm facade as he said, "I think it's better for both of you to tell me the whereabouts of our sect leader first, otherwise, it'll be hard for me to explain to our acting sect leader later." "Humph, why don't you just show your true colors? I think you're just greedy and want that 1000 supreme grade origin stones for yourself, don't you?" Nangong Chen, who had remained aloof from the beginning as he stood next to Nangong Yi, finally opened his mouth. The moment he opened his mouth, the first thing that came out was a snort. It was followed by undisguised mockery. "If we don't see the acting sect leader of Ling Tian sect, we'll not disclose the whereabouts of Duan Ling Tian." Nangong Yi looked at the man guardedly. At this moment, he was certain this middle-aged man was already planning to dig out the information of Duan Ling Tian's whereabouts from the very beginning. Then, he would proceed to take the reward of 1000 supreme grade origin stones that Ling Tian sect had announced for himself. Ha 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 ha. Upon hearing the Nangong twins' words, the middle-aged man burst out laughing immediately. He finally stopped after laughing for a while. "I can't believe both of you found out." As he looked at the Nangong twins, a sneer crept up on the corner of the middle-aged man's mouth. "However, do you have any other choice? If you don't tell me the whereabouts of our sect leader, I'll kill you immediately." When he reached the end of his sentence, his eyes gleamed coldly. A hint of killing intent could be seen in his eyes. "We're friends of your sect leader, and you still dare to kill us?" Nangong Yi's face turned grave immediately. "Even if I kill you too, how would the sect leader find out since we're at a deserted place like this?" The middle-aged man asked nonchalantly. "Humph, you're just a mere Ling Tian sect's disciple, and yet, you dare to say that you want to kill us. What a joke." Nangong Yi snorted as a smirk crept up on his face. At the same time, the origin energy on his body soared. The sky above him trembled as the heaven and earth energy whirled and gathered into the heaven and earth phenomenon. It revealed his cultivation base at the 6th level martial monarch stage. 6th level martial monarch stage? How surprising. However, it's such a pity that I'm not just a Ling Tian sect's disciple, I'm a Ling Tian sect's elder. The middle-aged man announced nonchalantly as origin energy rose from his body. Chapter 1266. Whoosh. After the heaven and earth energy whirled above the middle-aged man, the heaven and earth phenomenon appeared immediately. One silhouette of an ancient black dragon and 1000 ancient horned dragons. 8th level martial monarch. Horror dawned on the Nangong twins immediately when they saw that. They did not expect this man would be so powerful. No wonder he was confident enough to bring them to this deserted place. Soon after, the Nangong twins were locked in a battle with the middle-aged man. Between the Nangong twins, Nangong Chen, who was more powerful, was only at the 7th level martial monarch stage. Even when he unleashed his full power, he was still inferior to the man. It was fortunate he had Nangong Yi assisting him by the side. However, as time continued to go by, the Nangong twins began to show signs of losing. If it was not for the fact that the man still wanted to dig out Duan Ling Tian's whereabouts from them, perhaps they would be dead by now. Naturally, they knew he would not let them go even if they told him Duan Ling Tian's whereabouts. They knew this very well. Flee. In the end, the two Nangong twins could only retreat. Want to flee? A hint of disdain and a smirk appeared on the middle-aged man's face when he saw the Nangong twins trying to escape. In his opinion, these two could not even defeat him if they joined forces. It would be even more unlikely for them to escape under his nose. However, when he chased after them, he quickly discovered things were not turning out the way he had expected them to. The speed of the movement martial skill the blue-clad young man cast was far greater than his. Although he had to bring the red-clad young man with him, his speed was still not slower than his. Whoosh! Nangong Chen was in the lead as he fled with Nangong Yi in tow. Although his speed was slightly slower because of this, it was not slower than the middle-aged man who was pursuing them. It's fortunate that my movement martial skill is greater than his. Fear lingered in Nangong Chen's heart. While the Nangong twins were being pursued, a few martial emperor's disciples from Lingzhan Peak who were in charge of collecting information were gathered in a secluded cave were whispering among each other in Lingzhan Peak. According to my speculation, I'm pretty certain that Lord Lingtian must be the sect leader that Lingtian sect is searching for, one of the men said. Right now, both Lord Martial Emperor and Lord Lingtian are not here. Even Lord Lingtian's two friends have left Lingzhan Peak as well. What should we do? Should we go to Lingtian's sect and tell them about the whereabouts of Lord Lingtian? Another person asked. What, you want that 1000 supreme grade origin stones? Somebody snorted. About this matter, I think it's best for us to wait for Lord Martial Emperor and Lord Lingtian to decide when they return. As for Lingtian's sect, well, it's best for us to wait for Lord Lingtian to return so he can decide for himself, the last person said. The others agreed with the last person who spoke. In that case, let's not meddle in this matter, let's inform Lord Martial Emperor and Lord Lingtian when they return. Yeah, let's do that. The few Martial Emperor's disciples of Lingzhan Peak who was responsible for collecting information decided to keep Duan Lingtian's matter a secret. Everything would have to wait until Martial Emperor Lingzhan and Duan Lingtian return before they reveal anything. Due to their decision and the Nangong twin being pursued, Han Shuinai and the people of Lingtian's sect only found out about Duan Lingtian's whereabouts much later in the future. Duan Lingtian remained unaware of this matter. At this moment, he was being taken to the Hidden Fog Island by Martial Emperor Lingzhan. They were getting closer and closer to the Hidden Fog Island. Duan Lingtian, who was being led by Martial Emperor Lingzhan during the journey, woke up from his cultivation. When he lifted his head, he noticed a dense fog in front of him. The dense fog obstructed their view, completely blocking the scenery in front. Once we enter the dense fog, it'll only take us about 10 days before we arrive at the Hidden Fog Island, Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzhan, explained immediately when he noticed Duan Lingtian had woken up. 10 days. That's fast. Duan Lingtian nodded. It would take them about 10 days before they arrive at the Hidden Fog Island of the overseas Saint Island. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's emotions were in turmoil. After all, this was his first time leaving Cloud Continent. We've left Cloud Continent for a while now, but no demon beasts attacked us during the journey. Duan Lingtian asked Yang Wei curiously. Of course, there are, Yang Wei answered. There were more than 10 Demon Emperor stage demon beasts that attempted to attack us during the journey. I killed 3 of them, and the others retreated in fear. Retreated in fear? Duan Lingtian was stunned when he realized there was a sudden upheaval in the Calm Sea region. A giant figure suddenly shot out of the sea at lightning speed and rose up to the sky, blocking their way. It was a demon beast that was as huge as a hill. It emitted an inexplicable pressure as it stood there. The demon beast was completely black in color. Its body was covered in scales systematically while its 4 sharp claws looked like a hawk's claws. From afar, it looked as though a gigantic bear was standing there. Even its head was exactly identical to a bear. This is a Stygian scale bear, one of the demon beasts native to the overseas. This demon beast's strength is equivalent to a first-level martial emperor. Its brute strength is really terrifying. Although its strength is at the first-level demon emperor stage, it's different from ordinary first-level demon emperors. This Stygian scale bear has a relatively low IQ and is unable to transform into a human, Yang Wei explained as Duan Lingtian studied the hill-sized demon beast in front of him. Stygian scale bear. Duan Lingtian nodded his head in understanding. His eyes suddenly narrowed. He noticed the Stygian scale bear had already begun to make its move. Its hill-like body was charging toward them quickly. It seemed like its speed was not affected by its heavy and burdensome body. We encountered a Stygian scale bear just 2 weeks ago, and I killed it in just a blow. Brother Lingtian, do you want to give it a try? Due to its low IQ, it can't transform. Moreover, unlike ordinary demon emperors, this Stygian scale bear doesn't even know how to use spirit weapons. Yang Wei was calm even though the Stygian scale bear was charging at them. Instead, he turned to look at Duan Lingtian. First-level demon emperor stage. It doesn't know how to use spirit weapons. In Duan Lingtian's memory, let alone a demon emperor, even a demon monarch or a void transformation stage demon beast could transform into humans. They were no different from humans. When they battled, they knew how to use spirit weapons as well. Leave it to me. Duan Lingtian's body flashed, and he left the protection sphere that was formed by Yang Hui's energy. He charged toward the Stygian scale bear. In his opinion, a first-level Emperor stage demon beast like the Stygian scale bear that did not even know how to wield a spirit weapon was no threat to him. Moreover, he was confident he could kill it without needing to use his spirit weapon as well. Dragon soaring the 9 heavens. When Duan Lingtian charged out, a 5-colored energy soared from his body. It created a long rainbow that seemed as though it had transformed into a 5-colored divine dragon. It pounced at the Stygian scale bear immediately. Roar! At this time, the Stygian scale bear had also noticed Duan Lingtian charging at it. It raised its head and roared loudly. Its claws struck out and set off an ear-piercing sound of wind whistling. The sharp claws charged straight like a streak of light toward Duan Lingtian, who was pouncing at it. Duan Lingtian had no intention of dodging the Stygian scale bear's claws at all. He was calm as he charged directly at it. It seemed like he was going to risk the danger. Even Yang Wei, who had seen a great deal, was shocked as well. Boldness stems from superb skills. This thought suddenly sprung up in his mind. Duan Lingtian's face turned a little tense when he saw how the Stygian scale bear's sharp claws were about to land on his body. In the next instant, 9 dragons barrier. At that second, the origin energy inside Duan Lingtian's body whirled and left his body unreservedly before it merged perfectly with the 2 profundities that he had comprehended. The fused profundity, the sword profundity. When the Stygian scale bear's paws were just a foot away, the 5-colored energy that emitted a sharp and tyrannical aura around Duan Lingtian's body transformed into 5-colored divine dragons that rapidly revolved around Duan Lingtian's body. Almost at the same time, a layer of 5-colored light shield appeared around Duan Lingtian's body. The Stygian scale bear's sharp claws that contained a tremendous amount of terrifying energy landed on it. Boom, 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 the Stygian scale bear's sharp claws landed on the 5-colored light shield around Duan Lingtian's body. In just a second, a series of thunderous sound exploded. It was accompanied by a wave of energy from the impact that swept out toward the surroundings. Duan Lingtian and the Stygian scale bear were at the center of the energy from the impact. Apart from turning the air in the surroundings into a vacuum space, even the sea surface was affected by the energy from the impact. The sea surface caved, causing the seawater to compress before it turned tumultuous. Roar! When the energy from the impact began to weaken, the Stygian scale bear roared loudly once again. The roar contained hints of anger. And this anger was caused by Duan Lingtian. The Stygian scale bear was infuriated when it saw Duan Lingtian remained impervious to its attack. It raised its sharp claws again, poised to attack. What? You're not happy with the outcome? Duan Lingtian merely smiled softly when he saw the Stygian scale bear moved. He had no intention of stopping it. Soon after, the Stygian scale bear's claws slammed down again. This time, the strength was stronger since it had unleashed its full strength. Boom, 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 a thunderous sound erupted once again, setting off an even more horrifying energy from the impact. In addition to the loud sound, there was also a continuous sound of air detonation and the sound of the raging waves that was caused by the compression on the sea surface. What a strong defensive martial skill! Yang Hui's eyes brightened immediately. The shock was evident on his face. He was standing still inside the protective shield that was formed by his energy. Jodi and the others were in the midst of their own cultivation. They were not affected by this at all. No sound from the surroundings could be heard inside the protective shield. Although the energy from the impact swept out from where Duan Lingtian and the Stygian scale bear stood and caused the almost transparent protection shield to vibrate, it did not pierce through it at all. My 9 dragons barrier could be considered as being at the mastery stage already. Once it enters the perfection stage, I'll be able to solidify 9 divine dragons as a barrier around my body, Duan Lingtian muttered as he looked at the 5-colored divine dragons revolving swiftly around his body. Chapter 1267. The 5-colored light shield formed by the 5-colored revolving divine dragons remained impenetrable even though the Stygian scale bear had already unleashed all of its energy in its attack. Roar! The Stygian scale bear roared loudly again. However, a hint of fear could be heard from its roar this time. It was apparent the Stygian scale bear was afraid now that it had noticed how powerful Duan Lingtian was. Although its IQ was low, it was only low compared to other ordinary demon emperors. It was afraid now that it had encountered an opponent who remained impervious to its full-force attack. Its hill-like body shuddered before it suddenly turned around to escape. Don't leave in a hurry, As the saying goes, courtesy demands reciprocity. If you manage to survive after receiving 2 of my blows, I'll let you go. Duan Lingtian's gaze turned cold immediately when he saw the Stygian scale bear trying to leave. In the next instant, his body charged out as he cast Dragon Soaring the 9 heavens again. He soon caught up to the Stygian scale bear. Even without his spirit weapon, he was still stronger than the Stygian scale bear. This was apparent in the way he managed to easily block the Stygian scale bear's full-force attack by using his defensive martial skill earlier. He caught up to the Stygian scale bear effortlessly and blocked its path. Before the Stygian scale bear even realized what was happening, Duan Lingtian had already made his move. He cast his movement martial skill, Dragon Soaring the 9 heavens, again. It seemed as though he had transformed into a 5-colored divine dragon as he rammed into the Stygian scale bear. Whoosh! Without casting any martial skill, Duan Lingtian's fists rained down on the Stygian scale bear's chest. Boom! A loud sound echoed. It was the sound of Duan Lingtian's fists punching the Stygian scale bear's chest. It was like he was smashing rotten wood. The sky trembled as a wave of energy from the impact swept out. Boom! 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 The wave of energy from the impact continued to wreak havoc as it swept out, setting off a thunderous sound. The commotion was much bigger than when the Stygian scale bear first attacked Duan Lingtian. A-A-A-O-O-O-O-O-O-H-H-H-H-H-H. The Stygian scale bear cried out in a deafening roar as its body flew out like an arrow that left its bow. Its speed only slowed down after it flew about 100 meters away. Roar! After stabilizing its body that was as big as a hill, the Stygian scale bear glared at Duan Lingtian fiercely. It suddenly descended, trying to escape into the sea. How's this possible? It's still not dead. After the Stygian scale bear let out 2 shrill cries, it was brimming with energy again. It charged into the sea, surprising Duan Lingtian. Not only did he release all his origin energy in the punch earlier, but he even unleashed his fused profundity and sword profundity without any reservation. Originally, he thought his punch would be enough to kill the Stygian scale bear after seeing its strength. However, the outcome was beyond his expectation. The Stygian scale bear has a very horrifying scale armor. Even if I punch him using my full strength like you, it won't necessarily die. Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzhan's voice transmission entered Duan Lingtian's ears and woke him up. Its defense is so strong. Duan Lingtian was stunned when he heard this. It looked like God was fair after all. Although the Stygian scale bear had a low IQ and could not transform into a human, it was gifted with an indestructible shell. Duan Lingtian made his move once again when he saw the Stygian scale bear was about to enter the sea. Before it managed to enter the sea, he went to block its path. I previously said I'll let you go if you manage to survive after withstanding 2 blows of mine. Don't even think of fleeing before taking my second blow, Duan Lingtian snarled, not caring whether the Stygian scale bear understood him or not. He really did not mean what he said earlier. He thought he would be able to kill the Stygian scale bear in just 1 blow. Who would have thought the Stygian scale bear's scale armor would turn out to be this horrifying? It actually helped it withstand the blow, and it did not seem to be injured at all. Roar! The Stygian scale bear roared loudly as though it knew the human in front of him did not want to let him go. Since he could no longer escape, he pounced at Duan Lingtian furiously. Duan Lingtian's gaze remained calm as he looked at the Stygian scale bear's claws. 9 Dragons Barrier. Once again, 5 divine dragons appeared by his body as they revolved swiftly around him, transforming into a 5-colored light shield. Boom! 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 The Stygian scale bear attacked Duan Lingtian in a frenzy. It thrust its claws out again and again. The lightning-like attack rained down ceaselessly on the 5-colored light shield around Duan Lingtian. However, from the beginning until the end, its attack only managed to elicit ripple-like waves on the 5-colored light shield as though it was merely scratching an itch for the shield. What's he doing? Yang Wei let the rolling energy from the impact sweep out as he hovered motionlessly in the sky, looking like a mountain. Even the robe on his body did not flutter at all. He could not help but feel perplexed when he saw Duan Lingtian standing there quietly. Soon after, he obtained his answer. Tempest Point. Duan Lingtian, who was standing there in a daze, finally made his move. With a raise of his hand, he pointed a finger at the chest of the Stygian scale bear that was attacking him ceaselessly. To be more precise, his finger was pointed at the place between the Stygian scale bear's chest and neck. There was a gap there that was not covered by the scale armor. The gap was extremely small. If one did not pay attention, one would not have noticed it at all. The Tempest Point was one of the offensive martial skill from the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique. It was only an Earth rank martial skill, and it had been a long time since Duan Lingtian had last used it. However, it still looked imposing and majestic when Duan Lingtian cast it. The fused profundity substituted the wind profundity. The sword profundity substituted the thunder profundity. As the finger pointed up, the two profundities followed like shadows and slammed into the small gap in between the Stygian scale bear's chest and neck. Spurt, he pulled out his finger, causing fresh blood to splatter all over the place. Duan Lingtian did not feel any resistance at all throughout the entire process. When his finger pierced the Stygian scale bear, a few sharp forces shot out of his fingertip and wreaked havoc inside its body. The Stygian scale bear's hill-like body immediately shuddered violently. A-A-A-A-O-O-O-O-O. A-A-A-A-O-O-O-O-H-H-H-H-H. The Stygian scale bear's shrill cries gradually grew fainter and fainter before it died down completely. The Stygian scale bear's body immediately fell from the sky. Beast Core. Duan Lingtian made his move instantly when he saw the Stygian scale bear was about to fall into the sea. With the strength of his arm, he lifted it up forcefully while the other hand took out a knife and pierced the wound on its body. The next step was easy. Using the wound on the Stygian scale bear as the starting point, Duan Lingtian forcefully tore its scale armor open along the tiny gaps between the scales. Finally, he took out a pill-like item that was gleaming with a faint luster. It was the Stygian scale bear's beast core. After removing the profundity fragment from the Stygian scale bear's body, Duan Lingtian threw its body back into the sea. With a loud plop, it set off ripples of waves. Yang Wei, who was standing in the distance, was consumed with shock. What a strong observational skill! In just a span of a few breaths, he managed to discover the Stygian scale bear's weakness. Yang Wei sighed emotionally when he recalled the scene earlier. He still remembered when he went out to sea for the first time, it took him more than 1 hour to find the Stygian scale bear's weakness when he encountered it. However, the purple-clad young man before him only took a span of a few breaths. It was so fast that it was terrifying. After putting aside his battle trophy, Duan Lingtian returned to Yang Hui's side again. He asked curiously, are all the demon beasts in the overseas so powerful, can't transform, and have a low IQ? Of course not. Yang Wei shook his head. Demon emperors like the Stygian scale bear are the minority in the overseas. Most demon emperors here are similar to the demon emperors on Cloud Continent. For instance, the demon emperors of killed during our journey were all like the Stygian scale bear. As for the others, they are all able to transform into humans, and their IQ is in no way inferior to a human, Yang Wei explained. I see. Duan Lingtian nodded his head. Duan Lingtian's memory had not fully recovered yet. Otherwise, he would have already known about this from the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memory, since the Rebirth Martial Emperor had also left Cloud Continent. Although he did not go very far out to the overseas, he had at least stayed there for a period of time. He had come across many overseas demon beasts, and there was no lack of demon emperors among them. Soon after, Yang Wei continued on the journey with Duan Lingtian and the others in tow. Now that they were approaching the hidden fog island, Duan Lingtian did not continue to cultivate. He was deeply engrossed in the memory he had regained in the past few months. He noticed his memory was very rich. First of all, he remembered all the things he went through in the past. He had also regained most of his memory after he left the southern outer land of Cloud Continent and crossed the Ruo Shui River. Crossing the Ruo Shui River, taking in Gold Thug, annihilating the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan, invading Yin Yang sect, and building Ling Tian sect. The memory after Duan Lingtian had crossed Ruo Shui River began to grow in his mind, just like how the shoots would grow after the rain. Everything seemed like it had just happened yesterday. Tian Wu. Soon after, he remembered Feng Tian Wu, the woman who was always beside him. However, he could not recall where she was from or that she was held captive in Lost Stone Forest. He also remembered the incident in Lost Stone Forest. Moreover, he also remembered the Devilseal tablet. During the battle in Lost Stone Forest, the Devilseal tablet devilified him before he engaged in a tight battle with Martial Emperor Shiqi. It resulted in his consciousness being wiped out. He finally remembered all of this. So it turns out I actually lost the Devilseal tablet in Lost Stone Forest. Tian Wu's also in Lost Stone Forest. Duan Lingtian's eyes were gleaming coldly. Killing intent could be seen in his eyes. Brother Yang, Duan Lingtian took the initiative to call out to Yang Wei as he looked at him. Yes. Yang Wei looked at Duan Lingtian, puzzled. Is there anything I can help you with, Brother Lingtian? Brother Yang, I want to know if Martial Emperor Shiqi from Lost Stone Forest will bring his men to join the Hidden Fog martial competition this time. Duan Lingtian asked. Of course. Yang Wei nodded his head as though it was a matter of course. Martial Emperor Shiqi is a well-known martial emperor on Cloud Continent. He must have received the invitation from the Hidden Fog Island too. For the sake of the Saint Stones, he'll definitely bring his men here. Chapter 1268. That's great. Duan Lingtian nodded in satisfaction when he found out Martial Emperor Shiqi, the owner of Lost Stone Forest, would be coming as well. Meanwhile, the cold gleam in the depth of his eyes intensified as though he would devour anyone who dared to come near him. What's wrong, Brother Lingtian? Is there enmity between you and Martial Emperor Shiqi? Yang Wei could not help but ask when he noticed something was not quite right with Duan Lingtian's expression. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. Yang Wei did not continue to ask about the matter. He realized Duan Lingtian was unwilling to talk about it further when he did not continue to speak after he nodded. However, he could not help but remind him, Brother Lingtian, that Martial Emperor Shiqi has broken through to the 4th level Martial Emperor stage earlier than I did. Don't underestimate his ability. 4th level Martial Emperor stage, Duan Lingtian mumbled softly. His expression remained unchanged, but his heart could not help but sink. Although he had recalled what happened at Lost Stone Forest, the memory of the time when he used his power after the devilification and the Martial Emperor's ability were still a blur in his mind. After listening to Yang Wei, he gained a rough understanding of Martial Emperor Shiqi. Yang Wei continued to lead the way as Duan Lingtian muttered to himself. During Lingzan Peak's selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers, his cultivation base had successfully broken through to the 6th level Martial Monarch stage. Naturally, it was all thanks to the rebirth pill and the effective construction after the destruction that he had broken through so quickly. Moreover, the elevation of his ability was not limited to his cultivation base alone. The fused profundity and sword profundity that he had comprehended had a major elevation too. According to his estimation, the rapid elevation of his 2 profundities should be caused by the soul remnant energy from the Devilseal tablet that suppressed his soul. His broken soul was a blessing in disguise. Due to that, he had obtained an elevation in his profundities and changes that could not be explained. A few months had passed since the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers in Lingzan Peak. Although they had been traveling, Duan Lingtian did not forget to cultivate. Moreover, Martial Emperor Lingzan, Yang Wei, carried Duan Lingtian and the other 9 with his energy, so Duan Lingtian did not need to expend any effort at all. Therefore, his cultivation base had successfully broken through to the 9th level Martial Monarch stage. On the other hand, he managed to raise his fused profundity and sword profundity to the 5th level. His sword profundity had finally caught up with his fused profundity. It was all due to the sword Dao Duan Lingtian had memorized. The sword Dao came from the word, sword, that he found in his hometown. The word was left behind by a man who called himself a sword saint. When Duan Lingtian was thinking about his current ability, something flashed in his mind, and a name suddenly appeared in his mind. Feng Qingyang. It was the name of the man who called himself a sword saint. Memories related to the word, sword, was flashing in his mind at the moment. I was wondering why my sword profundity rose so quickly. It even caught up with my fused profundity. As it turns out, it's because of the word, sword. Duan Lingtian was in a good mood when he recalled this. He closed his eyes again. He knew very well that his current ability was far behind Martial Emperor Shiqi, who was at the 4th level Martial Emperor stage. He needed to quickly raise his ability in order to defeat Martial Emperor Shiqi. Soon after, he immersed himself in cultivation again. He could not let any opportunity to cultivate slip away. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Divine Dragon Form. As Duan Lingtian cultivated, they were getting closer and closer to the Hidden Fog Island under Yang Hui's lead. The Hidden Fog Island was in the overseas Saint Island. Many Martial Emperor and Demon Emperor powerhouses from Cloud Continent would be coming to the Hidden Fog Island. These Martial Emperor and Demon Emperor powerhouses' abilities were on par with those famous Martial Emperor and Demon Emperor powerhouses on Cloud Continent. The 3 most powerful people on Hidden Fog Island were the 3 island masters of Hidden Fog Island. The 3 of them managed the Hidden Fog Island. They had many disciples under them. Although they did not categorize them as disciples or followers, they had their own ranking system. There were the core disciples, inner island disciples, and outer island disciples. The three types of Hidden Fog Islands disciples received different treatments as well. The Hidden Fog Martial Competition was organized by the Hidden Fog Island. Apart from inviting the disciples under martial emperors and demon emperors from Cloud Continent, the outstanding disciples of Hidden Fog Island would participate in the martial competition as well. At that time, powerhouses from the Hidden Fog Island and Cloud Continent below the age of 70 would engage in an intense competition. At this moment, there were exactly 3 months left before the Hidden Fog Martial Competition began. However, there was already a crowd on the Hidden Fog Island. The Martial Emperor and Demon Emperor powerhouses who left Cloud Continent early had already arrived at the Hidden Fog Island with 10 of their most outstanding disciples. They were welcomed with great hospitality on the Hidden Fog Island. These Martial Emperor and Demon Emperor powerhouses along with their disciples were arranged to stay in secluded mansions. These mansions were scattered on the south of the Hidden Fog Island. The south of Hidden Fog Island was filled with lush greeneries and fresh air. The heaven and earth origin energy there was concentrated, making it a great place for cultivation. Most people who were enthusiastic about the Hidden Fog Island would know the island was rich in origin stones. They had a hidden reserve beneath the ground on the east side of the island. The cultivation environment on the Hidden Fog Island was affected by the origin stones reserve. Therefore, the east side of Hidden Fog Island was the best cultivation place on the island. It was also where the 3 island masters of Hidden Fog Island, core disciples, and inner island disciples cultivated. Due to their low status, outer island disciples were not allowed in there. The outer island disciples were scattered on the north and west side of Hidden Fog Island. The sceneries around the Hidden Fog Island were beautiful with lush greeneries everywhere. Contrary to the Hidden Fog Island's surrounding, there was a vast and boundless city in the middle of the island. It was the only city on the Hidden Fog Island. It was the Hidden Fog City. Apart from some interims elders and elders from Hidden Fog Island, there were also some martial emperor powerhouses from Cloud Continent staying in the Hidden Fog City. Apart from these people, Hidden Fog City was mostly occupied by the natives. The natives were the descendants of the Hidden Fog Island's disciples from when the island was founded. The talented descendants would become the Hidden Fog Island's disciples while those who were not would settle in Hidden Fog City, running small businesses. Many years had passed, Hidden Fog City had developed tremendously, and it was now a bustling city. On the south of Hidden Fog Island was where they welcomed their guests. Martial emperors and demon emperors from Cloud Continent with their 10 most outstanding disciples would be arranged to stay here. In the compound of a huge mansion on the south of Hidden Fog Island, a middle-aged man who was dressed casually was staring at 2 young ladies before him greedily. "Junior sisters, I bet both of you have never been to Hidden Fog City since it's your first time on Hidden Fog Island. How about we show you around?" Another middle-aged man stood next to him with a similar expression on his face. He was staring at the 2 ladies before him with undisguised greed and desire. There was a hint of wickedness in the depth of their eyes. Since they had lived on Hidden Fog Island for so many years, it was their first time seeing such beauties. They really felt their trip here was worthwhile. The 2 ladies before them were so beautiful it took their breaths away. They almost lost their souls when they saw the 2 ladies. Their appearance could be considered as peerless. They were extremely beautiful. Although they were both outstanding, the 2 ladies had completely different charisma. The one that was dressed in light purple had an alluring aura that seemed capable of making all men fall head over heels for her just like a red rosé. If the purple-clad lady was a red rose, the other lady would be a pure snow lotus. She looked like a pretty girl from a humble family. She was cute and naive. Both of them had their own beauty. "That's right, junior sisters. With your senior brothers accompanying you, we can guarantee your trip to Hidden Fog City will be worth it," the other middle-aged man said. He did not bother to conceal the desire in his eyes. Although both of the middle-aged men were dressed casually, they each had a token on their belts made from an unknown material. The word, "Inner," was carved on the token. If the natives on Hidden Fog Island were here, they would be able to recognize the token for what it was. It was the token that Hidden Fog Island's inner island disciples carried with them to show their identity. The abilities of Hidden Fog Island's inner island disciples were similar to ordinary martial emperor's disciples on Cloud Continent. "We thank senior brother's kindness, but we've only just arrived so we're planning to take a good and long rest. We don't have any plans to go to the Hidden Fog City just yet," the purple-clad young lady said slowly. She seemed polite, but there was a hint of loathing for the two middle-aged men in her beautiful eyes. "If that's the case, we'll come back another day," one of the middle-aged men said. Soon after, the two middle-aged men turned around. As soon as they turned around, their faces immediately turned solemn. They had been here 10 times at least in recent times, but they were rejected every single time. Due to that, their patience was wearing thin. If those two ladies were ordinary women, they would not hesitate to use force if they could not convince them with words. Unfortunately, the two ladies they saw were a martial emperor's direct disciples from Cloud Continent. Although the two ladies' abilities were lesser than theirs, they did not dare to be aggressive. They would only do that if they were seeking death. Both of them were just Hidden Fog Island's inner island disciples. Even if they were killed by the martial emperor powerhouses from Cloud Continent, the 3 island masters of Hidden Fog Island would not do anything about it. It would be a different story if they were Hidden Fog Island's core disciples. Chapter 1269. To the 3 island masters, the status of the core disciples on Hidden Fog Island was equivalent to the martial emperor's direct disciples on Cloud Continent. "Sister Ka, it seems like we won't be able to go to Hidden Fog City today. Although the two fellows have left, they might be hiding nearby. They'll definitely follow us as soon as we leave," the purple-clad lady said to the lady next to her. "It's all right, Sister Fair, we'll go in a few days' time," the latter said. The two ladies were Li Fei and Ka. They had followed Martial Emperor Yuhan to the Hidden Fog Island. Although they were Martial Emperor Yuhan's direct disciples, it was difficult for them to achieve outstanding result with their current abilities in the Hidden Fog martial competition. They came to Hidden Fog Island just to spectate. Ever since they arrived at the Hidden Fog Island, they had planned to visit Hidden Fog City. However, two irritating flies would always bother them, affecting their mood greatly. The flies that Li Fei and Ka were referring to were none other than the two Hidden Fog Island's inner island disciples who had just left. Previously, it was these two inner island disciples who had shown them to their accommodation. Who would have thought they would linger around and irritate them? As soon as Li Fei and Ka were about to leave, they would show up just in time. They were like those medicinal herbal patches that were so sticky that it was hard to get rid of. "Senior sister will come out of her closed-door cultivation in a few days, we can ask her to accompany us at that time," Li Fei mumbled as her eyes gleamed. "I'm sure they wouldn't dare to do as they please if senior sister Shu is with us." Ka scoffed softly. At the moment when the two ladies returned to their room to cultivate, a group of guests arrived at the Hidden Fog Island. They were the people from Lingzan Peak. It was Duan Lingtian and the others. Led by Martial Emperor Lingzan, Yang Wei, they successfully traveled through the dangerous ocean and arrived safely at the Hidden Fog Island. "We've arrived at the Hidden Fog Island," Yang Wei said. He surprised everyone, including Duan Lingtian, with his words. After a while, everyone regained their senses. "We're here. So this is Hidden Fog Island. We can only see a small part of Hidden Fog Island standing here. Just like its name, most of Hidden Fog Island is hidden by the fog. Many of them observed the island before them and discussed among themselves." Duan Lingtian stood aside and took a good look at the island. The Hidden Fog Island really lived up to its name. As they entered the Hidden Fog Island, two silhouettes came from afar and blocked their path. "Sir, may I ask which martial emperor powerhouse from Cloud Continent are you?" They asked Yang Wei, who was at the lead, bluntly as they blocked their path. "Martial Emperor Lingzan," Yang Wei said calmly as he looked at the two people's waists, "both of you are the Hidden Fog Island's inner island disciples." "Sir, Island Master sent us to welcome all of you, please follow me. We've prepared your accommodation in the south of Hidden Fog Island," one of the inner island disciples said respectfully. "Please lead the way." Yang Wei nodded. The two inner island disciples turned around to lead the way. They led Duan Lingtian, Yang Wei, and the others to the south of Hidden Fog Island. It was where the southern island of Hidden Fog Island was located. The southern island was where Hidden Fog Island hosted their guests. Usually, nobody was allowed there. There would be inner island disciples monitoring and patrolling the southern island from above every now and then. There was only one outcome for all intruders that were caught: death. Along the way, Duan Lingtian and the others learned about the Hidden Fog Island from one of the inner island disciples. They learned about the 3 powerful island masters of Hidden Fog Island, a group of Martial Emperor and Demon Emperor interim elders and elders, as well as the matter of some Martial Emperors who were residing here long-term. Naturally, they also learned many things about the weak natives living in Hidden Fog City. This hidden fog island is closed to public. Apart from some powerful martial emperor and demon emperor powerhouses, the natives usually don't leave the island at all from the moment they're born to the day they die. This is like a hidden paradise, Duan Lingtian could not help but exclaim inwardly. Meanwhile, they had also learned of the differences between the hidden fog island's core disciples, inner island disciples, and outer island disciples from that inner island disciple. If one were to use Cloud Continent's martial emperor powerhouses as an example, the hidden fog island's outer island disciples would be the equivalent of a martial emperor's followers. Meanwhile, inner island disciples would be the equivalent of a martial emperor's disciples, and the core disciples would be the equivalent of a martial emperor's direct disciples. So the people from Cloud Continent aren't the only one who will be participating in the hidden fog martial competition. People from the hidden fog island are also participating. Yang Hui's third direct disciple, Zhang En, asked in surprise after listening to the inner island disciple. Yes, the inner island disciple nodded. But just like all of you, only 10 of us from Hidden Fog Island will participate in the competition. The Hidden Fog Island is so big, but only 10 people are participating in the Hidden Fog Martial competition. I'm sure the 10 people who will be participating must be remarkable, right? Someone asked. Of course, the inner island disciple nodded with pride in his eyes. On our Hidden Fog Island, we have at least 20 core disciples. The 10 people who are participating in the Hidden Fog Martial competition are 10 of the most outstanding core disciples on our Hidden Fog Island. Bang! The inner island disciples' words struck Duan Lingtian and the others like a lightning. They were in shock. There were at least 20 core disciples on the Hidden Fog Island. One must know that the Hidden Fog Island's core disciples' strength was similar to the Martial Emperor's direct disciples on Cloud Continent. The 10 people from Hidden Fog Island that were selected among at least 20 core disciples were undoubtedly elite. There must be quite a number of them who were Martial Emperors. Apart from Duan Lingtian and Zhou who managed to keep their calm, the remaining 8, including the Martial Emperor's direct disciples, Songting and Zhang En, looked a little wretched. At this moment, they finally realized they might encounter an undefeatable opponent during the Hidden Fog Martial competition. Soon after, Duan Lingtian and the others arrived at a huge mansion under the 2 inner island disciples' lead. There were many small compounds in the mansion. It was more than enough for all 11 of them to occupy a compound each. Sir, the Hidden Fog Martial competition will only take place 3 months later. Within these 3 months, if you and your disciples are bored, you can visit Hidden Fog City, the 2 inner island disciples said to Yang Wei before they left. Yang Wei nodded. If there's nothing else, we'll make a move now. The 2 inner island disciples left after bidding them goodbye. They turned around and headed straight to the east side of Hidden Fog Island. Their mission was to welcome one Martial Emperor powerhouse and his people. Once they have completed their mission, they would report to the eastern island of Hidden Fog Island. After they gave their report, they would not be required to welcome another Martial Emperor powerhouse and his disciples. The other inner island disciples would welcome the other Martial Emperor powerhouses who had yet to arrive and the people they brought along. There are natives from Hidden Fog Island and also Martial Emperor powerhouses from Cloud Continent who had settled down in Hidden Fog City. How interesting. Duan Lingtian sat on the bed with his legs crossed as he mumbled softly, I'll visit Hidden Fog City in a few days. I'd like to experience the Hidden Fog Island's culture. The cultivation environment on Cloud Continent can't compare to the Hidden Fog Island since it's an overseas saint island. It feels like there's something beneath the ground. Could it be a supreme grade origin stones reserve? Duan Lingtian speculated as he indulged in the concentrated heaven and earth origin energy on Hidden Fog Island. Supreme Grade Origin Stones Reserve. All of the origin stones produced from such a reserve were Supreme Grade Origin Stones. There might even be some high-quality Supreme Grade Origin Stones among them. An Origin Stones Reserve like that did not exist on Cloud Continent. Although there were Supreme Grade Origin Stones on Cloud Continent, they came from high-grade Origin Stones Reserves. The quantity was low. It could not be compared to a Supreme Grade Origin Stones Reserve no matter what. Although Duan Lingtian had speculated there was a Supreme Grade Origin Stones Reserve beneath the Hidden Fog Island, he had zero interest in it. To him, Supreme Grade Origin Stones were just currency for trading and materials to carve inscriptions on. He did not care how many he had as long as he had enough. Since there might be Supreme Grade Origin Stones beneath the island, then this Hidden Fog Island can be considered as a treasure island. There must be many precious minerals and herbs here. I'll make a trip to Hidden Fog City in a few days and see if I can gather all the materials I need to craft the Royal Grade Spirit Archery set. I'll be able to form the royal grade weapon flame once I successfully raise my cultivation base and break through to the martial emperor stage. At that time I'll be able to craft a royal grade spirit bow and arrows if I manage to gather all the materials. By then, I'll be able to use the royal grade spirit archery set to cultivate the colossal arrowlight arrow that father left for me. Duan Lingtian made up his mind in just a blink of an eye. Subsequently, he closed his eyes again to calm his mind for cultivation. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Divine Dragon Form. While he was cultivating, he did not forget to comprehend the 2 types of profundities. While his cultivation was rising rapidly, his 2 profundities were also rising rapidly. 10 days later, Duan Lingtian woke up from his cultivation. I'm just a step away from breaking through to the martial emperor stage, all I need is just a little more time before I successfully break through. Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed as soon as he opened them. There was a hint of confidence in those eyes. He was only 1 step away from his breakthrough. There was only 1 hurdle left before he entered the martial emperor stage. Once he had broken through, he would be like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. His cultivation would skyrocket at that time. I'll make a trip to Hidden Fog City now. Duan Lingtian walked out of the room and left the small standalone compound before he leapt up into the sky. It seemed as though he had turned into a bolt of lightning as he made his way to Hidden Fog City. Chapter 1270. On the way to Hidden Fog City, Duan Lingtian heard a voice in his head. Kid, how long has it been? I see that your soul's almost completely recovered. It was Wang Ba who had spoken. My soul's almost recovered. Duan Lingtian did not respond to Wang Ba as his eyes lit up. Instead, he asked, that means, I'll regain all the memories I had lost soon. That's right, Wang Ba said. Kid, you haven't answered me. It's close to 1 year from the time you told me it would take 1 year at the most for my memory to return, Duan Lingtian said. Just as I expected, Wang Ba said with pride. Kid, are you convinced now? In my opinion, it's the dumbest thing you could have done to ask Martial Emperor Lingzan for help. Duan Lingtian ignored Wang Ba's prideful words. However, he soon recalled something and could not help but ask, Bastard, how much do you know about Saint-grade martial tactics? Saint-grade martial tactics are very rare here. In the Dao martial Saint land, almost everyone above the innate void restoration stage cultivates Saint-grade martial tactics. Wang Ba said calmly, in the Dao martial Saint land, only Saint-grade martial tactics can affect a person's ability significantly. Mortal-grade martial tactics are just for show. It's nice to look at but useless. Mortal-grade martial tactics. Duan Lingtian was stunned. What's that? The martial skills all of you cultivate on mortal continents are mortal-grade martial tactics, Wang Ba said. So martial skills on Cloud Continent are mortal-grade martial tactics. Duan Lingtian's lips twitched involuntarily when he heard Wang Ba's words. Based on Wang Ba's words, all martial skills on Cloud Continent, no matter if it was yellow rank, profound rank, earth rank or heaven rank, were all mortal-grade martial tactics. Moreover, according to Wang Ba, mortal-grade martial tactics were just for show. Just for show, don't you think you're crossing the line? All of the martial skills on our Cloud Continent, especially heaven rank advanced martial skills, can raise a person's ability significantly, Duan Lingtian said unhappily. This was not a joke. He had expended a lot of effort to study and cultivate the variety of martial skills from the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique. It was how he obtained all his achievements today. However, Wang Ba's words denied all his years of hard work. It was only natural that he was unhappy. What, still not convinced? Wang Ba scoffed. Brat, you've yet to experience a Saint-grade martial tactic. As soon as you do, you'll realize the mortal-grade martial tactic you've been practicing is just a joke. Are you sure you're not exaggerating? Duan Lingtian asked in his deep voice after he took a deep breath. Until now, he was still unwilling to admit that mortal-grade martial tactics were just for show. Let me tell you this, I'm guessing even the best mortal-grade martial tactic on your mortal continent would only give a 10% boost to a martial artist's ability, right? Wang Ba asked. 10%, Duan Lingtian mumbled softly. The martial skill he had cultivated was considered the best martial skill on Cloud Continent. However, the martial skill only gave approximately a 10% boost even if he had broken through to the peak level. So you're saying, the boost that Saint-grade martial tactics give a martial artist is far more than a mortal-grade martial tactic? Duan Lingtian asked. Of course, Wang Ba said, even the lowest ranked Saint-grade martial tactic would give at least a 20% boost to a martial artist's ability. The lowest rank Saint grade martial tactic would give at least a 20% boost to a martial artist's ability. Duan Lingtian frowned. Are you sure? The boost was a fold higher than the heaven rank advanced martial skill he had mastered. HMPH. You'll find out if what I'm saying is true or not after cultivating a Saint grade martial tactic when you get to the Dao martial Saint land in the future. Wang Ba scoffed. Why do I have to wait until I get to the Dao martial Saint land? Didn't you say you're some Saint stage powerhouse? Haven't you cultivated a Saint grade martial tactic before? Duan Lingtian asked. He was going to continue asking when Wang Ba suddenly interrupted him. Brat, I know what's going through your mind. Are you hoping I'll teach you a Saint grade martial tactic? Unfortunately, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed, Wang Ba said. HMPH. How dare you call yourself a Saint stage powerhouse? It's just a Saint grade martial tactic, but you're so unwilling to teach me. So petty, Duan Lingtian said unwillingly with a scoff. Brat, I'm not trying to be petty. You must know that Saint grade martial tactics are different from mortal grade martial tactics. You can learn mortal grade martial tactics from verbal lessons but not Saint grade martial tactics. You must cultivate Saint grade martial tactics through Saint tokens, Wang Ba continued to say. Saint token? Duan Lingtian was a little confused. At the same time, something flashed in his mind, and he thought of a certain jade token. It was the jade token his miserly father left him. There was a set of Saint grade martial tactic in the jade token. Could the jade token be a Saint token? Soon after, Duan Lingtian found out his speculation was right as Wang Ba proceeded to speak. The jade token his miserly father left him was indeed a Saint token. Saint grade martial tactics are usually stored in Saint tokens. If you're looking to cultivate a certain Saint grade martial tactic, you'll need to look for the Saint token containing the Saint grade martial tactic, Wang Ba said. That's the reason why I can't teach you any Saint grade martial tactic no matter how many of it I know. You can only obtain the Saint token yourself to cultivate a Saint grade martial tactic. The only thing you need to do is to release your spiritual energy into the Saint token to retrieve the Saint grade martial tactic and cultivate it step by step. After you've cultivated the Saint grade martial tactic in the Saint token to its peak, the Saint token will be useless to you, Wang Ba added. Must I keep the Saint token with me until I cultivated the Saint grade martial tactic to its peak? Duan Lingtian frowned. Wouldn't it sprout like a seed in one's head, as long as spiritual energy is released into the Saint token, so one can learn everything about the Saint grade martial tactic? Where did you get that idea from? Wang Ba said in disdain. Someone must have tricked you. Brat, I'll teach you an important lesson today. No matter how powerful a person's comprehension capability is, it's impossible for them to memorize the Saint grade martial tactic in a Saint token completely within a short period of time. Everyone needs to learn and cultivate the Saint grade martial tactic in the Saint token step by step. During my time, even people with outstanding comprehension capability would need 2 to 3 years to comprehend the lowest level Saint grade martial tactic contained in a Saint token. Of course, the day he comprehended everything in the Saint token would be the day he cultivated the Saint grade martial tactic in the Saint token to its peak, Wang Ba said. Instead of cultivating it, can't we memorize the Saint grade martial tactic in the Saint token first and slowly cultivate it at a later time? Duan Lingtian asked eagerly with a frown on his face. Impossible, Wang Ba said with conviction. Everyone can only see a portion of the Saint grade martial tactic when they look into a Saint token with their spiritual energy. They'll only be able to look at the other parts of the Saint grade martial tactic after comprehending and cultivating the information they first saw. Just like that, everything has to be done step by step. The day they retrieve all the information from the Saint grade martial tactic in the Saint token will be the day they cultivate the Saint grade martial tactic to its peak, Wang Ba explained patiently. There should be exceptions, right? Maybe there are some Saint tokens that allow us to retrieve the Saint grade martial tactic in a go so we can memorize and cultivate it at a later date, Duan Lingtian asked. It's impossible that such a Saint token exists. Brat, I don't care who told you that. The only thing I know is that you've been tricked, Wang Ba said calmly. He had been tricked. Duan Lingtian had no comment regarding what Wang Ba said, but it made sense for him to believe his words. The thing was he had memorized everything about the Saint grade martial tactic, Colossal Arrow Light Arrow, in the Saint token his father had left for him without missing a single word. Although he had yet to begin his cultivation of the Colossal Arrow Light Arrow, he would still be able to cultivate it successfully even if he threw away the Saint token that contained the Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. This was because the Colossal Arrow Light Arrow had been imprinted in his mind like a sprouting seed from the second he released his spiritual energy into the Saint token. He could not forget it even if he wanted to. Being able to memorize the saint-grade martial tactic contained in the saint token completely just by releasing my spiritual energy into it, could it be a special ability that only I possess? That was the only guess Duan Lingtian had. The more he thought about it, the more certain he was. After all, according to Wang Ba, something like that was impossible. It would be great if I can obtain another saint token, then I can verify if I really possess a special ability, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. If he really possessed such a special ability, no matter what kind of saint tokens he obtained in the future, he would be able to learn all the saint-grade martial tactics as long as it's within his spiritual energy's capability. This caused his emotion to turn chaotic. Soon after, Duan Lingtian regained his senses and calmed his stirred emotion. He regained his senses when the skyline of a big city appeared before his eyes. The looming city hidden behind the gloomy fog was like a grand palace in Wonderland. So this is Hidden Fog City? When Duan Lingtian taking in the sight of the big city looming before him, he saw 3 silhouettes hidden by the fog heading in the direction of the city as well. It was clear the 3 silhouettes entering the city belonged to 3 ladies. Why do their backs look so familiar? Duan Lingtian thought he had seen 2 of the 3 ladies before. Chapter 1271. The 2 familiar silhouettes were getting further and further away. Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses when the 2 silhouettes disappeared into Hidden Fog City. Who are they? Duan Lingtian frowned. Confusion was written all over his face. He pushed the thoughts in his mind aside and chased after them. It seemed like he wanted to find out to whom those 2 familiar silhouettes belonged to. He thought the 2 ladies' backs looked very familiar. If only one of them seemed familiar to him, he could dismiss it as just a mistake or him overthinking things. However, the 2 familiar silhouettes that appeared at the same time seemed to tell him that it was not a coincidence. He might know the 2 ladies with beautiful bodies. It seemed like he knew them from before, and their relationship was one of a kind. At this moment, he could clearly feel his heart beating. It was beating so hard it felt like it was about to jump out of his chest. However, when he entered Hidden Fog City, he could not find the 2 ladies. It seemed like they came from the southern island as well. That means the 2 ladies and the azure-clad lady should be the people brought by some martial emperor or demon emperor powerhouse from Cloud Continent, Duan Lingtian speculated. When he arrived at the Hidden Fog Island earlier, he heard from the 2 inner island disciples who welcomed them that the southern island was where they hosted their guests. Guests who arrived at the Hidden Fog Island recently were those martial emperor and demon emperor powerhouses from Cloud Continent and their disciples who would be participating in the Hidden Fog martial competition. Hidden Fog City was bustling. When one entered the city, it felt no different from one of those big bustling cities on Cloud Continent. Duan Lingtian walked around the city a few times, but his effort was in vain. He could not find those 2 ladies who looked extremely familiar to him. Forget about it. If they're here for the Hidden Fog martial competition, I'll see them again sooner or later. At that time, I'll find out if we know each other, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. There was still quite some time left before the Hidden Fog martial competition organized by Hidden Fog Island would begin. I'll walk around and see if I can gather all the materials needed to craft the Royal Grade Spirit Archery set. I must break through to the Martial Emperor stage before the Hidden Fog martial competition begins. I'll definitely be able to raise my ability further after I craft the Royal Grade Spirit Archery set and cultivate the Saint Grade martial tactic, Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. Ever since Duan Lingtian learned about how powerful Saint-grade martial tactics were from Wang Ba, his urgency to cultivate the colossal arrow-light arrow began to grow. He was desperate to cultivate it as soon as he could. As soon as I raise my ability, I'll be able to get a good ranking in the Hidden Fog martial competition. A good ranking means more saint stones for me, Duan Lingtian thought to himself as his eyes sparkled. When he obtained more saint stones, his journey after breaking through to the martial emperor stage would be smooth sailing. After all, saint stones were items that could boost a martial emperor powerhouse's cultivation. It was a precious and priceless treasure. He was desperate for saint stones. At this time, Duan Lingtian quickened his speed to gather the materials. Meanwhile, there were 3 silhouettes standing in an herbal medicine store on the side of the main road where Duan Lingtian was about to pass by. 2 beautiful ladies were accompanying an azure-clad lady. The azure-clad lady was looking at a medicinal pill bottle with medicinal pills. Sister Fair, it's just as you said, that 2 irritating fellows really don't dare to flirt with us when we're with senior sister Shu, the beautiful and pure lady who looked like she came from a humble family said to the purple-clad lady next to her. The purple-clad lady smiled lightly after hearing her words. Her beautiful smile seemed capable of charming everyone, and it dimmed everything in her surroundings. In order to get rid of that too irritating flies, she had asked their senior sister Soaring, Martial Emperor Yuhan's direct disciple, to accompany them out today. Due to Soaring's presence, that too annoying flies did not dare to approach them, let alone flirt with them. The purple-clad lady was Li Fei. Meanwhile, the pure lady who looked like she came from a humble family was Ka. Suddenly, Li Fei instinctively looked out of the herbal medicine store. She did not get a clear look, but she saw a purple silhouette that was passing by in a hurry. Although she did not see it clearly, her beautiful body involuntarily trembled. Rascal, her body trembled because the silhouette was too familiar. She had dreamed of that silhouette many times. It appeared in her dreams and lingered around. It almost drove her insane. Sister Fair, did you mistake him for someone else? How's it possible that young master? Ka looked out of the herbal medicine store, but she did not see the purple silhouette that rushed by. She thought it was merely Li Fei's hallucination from missing Duan Ling Tian. In her opinion, although her young master was outstanding, it was impossible for him to be here. Where was this place? It was the Hidden Fog Island. As an overseas saint island, the Hidden Fog Island was located on the northern ocean of Cloud Continent. There was a certain risk even for a martial emperor powerhouse to travel across the northern ocean from Cloud Continent to the Hidden Fog Island. Martial emperor powerhouses with mediocre abilities might even die during the journey. This was because there were many ferocious demon beasts in the northern ocean. Among the demon beasts, some of them were at the demon emperor stage. They managed to arrive safely due to the protection from their master, Martial Emperor Yuhan. Now, Li Fei was saying her young master was here. It was impossible for her to believe it unless she saw him with her own eyes. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past, causing Ka's silky hair to flutter in the wind. It framed her almost perfect face. At this very moment, she seemed to have transformed into a fairy who had descended from heaven to earth. Sister Fair. She noticed Li Fei had left her side when she regained her senses. Li Fei had left the herbal medicine store and was chasing after that silhouette. Ka immediately chased after her. Meanwhile, their senior sister Soaring reacted instantly and chased after them when she noticed their abrupt departure. She soon caught up to Ka and saw Li Fei at the same time. To her surprise, her junior sister Li Fei, who was usually obedient, was blocking someone's path. It was a man in purple. He stood there motionlessly. That back, Ka's beautiful body began to tremble when she saw the purple-clad young man's back before she even had a clear look of his face. She stood rooted to the spot. It was as though her feet were filled with lead. The person's back could not be more familiar to her. Rascal, it's really you. At this moment, Li Fei, who was blocking the purple-clad man's path, walked toward him slowly. She did not bother with the judgmental looks from the people who were watching. There was a joy that she could not hide on her extremely beautiful face. Tears of joy were also streaming down her face. It had been too long. She finally met him, the man that she, Li Fei, held onto with her life. She would sacrifice anything for him, including her life. Soon after, Li Fei arrived before the purple-clad man. It was none other than Duan Ling Tian. She stared at him as tears of joy streamed down her face. She asked shakily, "Rascal, why are you here? Who are you?" The smile on Li Fei's face completely froze when she heard that voice. That voice belonged to Duan Ling Tian. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian was looking at Li Fei in confusion. This person who seemed so familiar to him was a complete stranger. "You don't recognize me." All of a sudden, Li Fei's face turned gravely pale. She had just managed to stabilize herself, but her body began to tremble again. Tears were streaming down her face like pouring rain. She did not expect the man that she had been missing so much no longer recognized her. Did he forget about her? At this moment, Li Fei felt as though her heart was being cut into a million pieces. The pain and agony spread all over her body and suffocated her. Fwah. Eventually, Li Fei could no longer endure the lifeblood boiling in her body. She spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face turned even paler. Her pain caused many to feel distressed. Sister Fair. At this moment, Ka finally regained her senses, and she rushed out immediately. She held onto Li Fei's trembling body that seemed like it was about to fall at any given time. "Ka, rascal, he doesn't recognize me," Li Fei said shakily as Ka held her. Her voice was shaking so much as though she was extremely cold. She could not speak properly at all. Ka's eyes turned red when she heard that and looked at Duan Lingtian. Before she could speak, Duan Lingtian felt an unknown pain and grabbed his chest. His face turned a little pale as he looked at the two ladies standing before him. Who are both of you? Why do I find both of you so familiar, and, why do I feel a wrenching pain in my heart? Duan Lingtian's voice was shaking a little as he spoke. Young master, did you forget about Ka as well? Ka's eyes were even redder now after she listened to Duan Lingtian's words. Tears were pouring down her pure and beautiful face. The people who were watching felt pain in their hearts. This brat, how can he upset these two ladies like this? I can tell he's a bastard. A man as ungrateful as him should be struck by lightning. Many people glared at Duan Lingtian. They were enraged with Duan Lingtian's ill treatment of the two ladies. When people were condemning Duan Lingtian as Li Fei and Ka looked at him in despair, he forced a smile and said apologetically, I lost my memory. Lost his memory? Li Fei and Ka stopped crying when they heard Duan Lingtian's words, their faces were immediately filled with concern. Chapter 1272. At that very moment, both Li Fei or Ka experienced a complete change in mood from one end of the spectrum to the other. The change was like rising from hell to heaven. Their man did not forget about them. Instead, he had suffered amnesia. Rascal, how did you lose your memory? Young master, what exactly happened? Li Fei and Ka asked with apprehension while looking at Duan Lingtian. When they found out their man had not intentionally forgotten about them, the gloom in their eyes faded away, leaving only concern. Gazing at the two ladies who were looking at him with concern, the way Duan Lingtian's heart thundered was getting more and more intense. He could tell that the two ladies whom he felt familiar were sincerely worried about him. Their feelings were real and they were not faking it. I used to have friends like them. Duan Lingtian was eager to recover that part of his memory the second he looked at them. Although he had a huge chunk of his memory restored, he had yet to recover the most important part. One of them included these two ladies who seemed to have an extraordinary relationship with him. Could you tell me what kind of relationship did we share? I feel that both of you seem very familiar and close to me, it's like the both of you are my family. Duan Lingtian stared at Li Fei and Ka attentively and asked softly. Even Duan Lingtian did not realize that his tone had mellowed. Now that he was speaking, his eyes were gentle like flowing water. We were your fiancés. Li Fei looked at Duan Lingtian with fondness and anticipation, eager to see if her reminder could make him recall his memory. Fiancés. Duan Lingtian was stunned. The people who were watching gasped. These two remarkable ladies are his fiancés. That's not fair. It's the first time seeing such a beauty in my entire life. Even better that there are two of them, but both of them are his fiancés. If I could replace him, I'd be willing to be him even if I'm dying a month later. The onlooking men gawked at Duan Lingtian with envy and jealousy. They were eager to replace him. So, he's fiancé to junior sister Li and junior sister Ka. Shu Rong stood nearby and ogled Duan Lingtian without blinking. To be exact, she was looking at Duan Lingtian's back as she experienced a stir of emotions. From her knowledge, her master martial emperor Yuhan had taken Li Fei and Ka in as her direct disciples for their fiancé's sake. Naturally, she had no idea what her master was up to. However, she figured that her master might want something from their fiancé. She could not figure out any other reason apart from that. It took Duan Lingtian a while to snap back to his senses. He only asked after inhaling a deep breath in, the both of you are my fiancés. Although he believed what Li Fei said, he wanted to be absolutely sure of this shocking piece of information. So, he already had a fiancé, and not only one, but two. Yes, Li Fei nodded. Her expression remained the same even though she had just admitted herself to be Duan Lingtian's fiancé while many people watched. It was as if those people were invisible to her. However, Ka was much more bashful than her. Her cheeks flushed like they were going to drip with blood. Duan Lingtian had no idea what to say after hearing Li Fei's affirmation. Although he had found out the two ladies before him were his fiancés, he could not recall anything about them at all. All he felt at that moment was that the two ladies were very familiar and intimate to him. He completely could not recall what they had gone through together. Duan Lingtian looked around and felt uneasy being watched like they were monkeys in a performance. He said to Li Fei and Ka in an instant, let's find somewhere to sit down so the both of you can tell me more about our past. Let's see if I can recall anything. I've got many things to ask you too, Li Fei agreed immediately. Although Ka did not speak, she nodded obediently. Being the woman that she was, she listened and obeyed whatever Duan Lingtian said. Years had passed, and although both Li Fei and Ka had drastic changes in their abilities, they had not changed at all when it came to the fondness they had for Duan Lingtian. He was the man that they committed their lives to. He was the only man they ever wanted. Junior sister Li, junior sister Ka, so, this is the fiancé the both of you have always talked about. A voice spoke up suddenly. Duan Lingtian, Li Fei, and Ka, who were ready to leave, stopped moving and looked at the person who had stood up to speak. Senior sister Shu, Li Fei and Ka immediately greeted the person who stood out. Duan Lingtian looked closely and noticed that it was a lady in azure. She was the third silhouette who had stood with Li Fei and Ka outside the hidden fog city when he had seen them earlier. Rascal, this is senior sister Shu, Li Fei introduced while looking at Duan Lingtian. Senior sister Shu. Although Duan Lingtian could not recall Li Fei and Ka from his past, since he had confirmed that the both of them were his fiancés, he did not dare to hesitate as he greeted their senior sister. I only know that your junior sister Li and junior sister Ka's fiancé. May I know how should I address you? Shu Rong questioned Duan Lingtian while looking at him with a smile. You can call me Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded at Shu Rong. Duan Lingtian, I'll remember that. But I heard from junior sister Li and junior sister Ka earlier that you should be at the southern outer land on the Cloud Continent. Shu Rong looked at Duan Lingtian and asked curiously, how come you're here? I'm here for the Hidden Fog Martial Competition, Duan Lingtian replied. I see. Surprise flashed across Shu Rong's eyes as she then asked, which martial emperor powerhouse from the Cloud Continent are you here with? Martial Emperor Ling Zan, Duan Lingtian replied. Shu Rong nodded and turned to Li Fei and Ka after beaming at Duan Lingtian. Junior sister Li, junior sister Ka, the both of you haven't seen him for years. You guys should catch up. I'll let master know, Shu Rong said. Thank you, senior sister Shu. Li Fei and Ka's eyes lit up when they heard Shu Rong. Alright then, I won't hold up your husband and wife's catch up. I'll return to the southern island now. Shu Rong then left after informing them. Many of the onlookers whispered among themselves after Shu Rong left. So, they're from the Cloud Continent. They're here for the Hidden Fog Martial Competition. They must be following some Martial Emperor or Demon Emperor powerhouses from the Cloud Continent. At that moment, many of them figured out Duan Lingtian and the others' identities. Rascal, let's go, Li Fei held Ka's hand and said to Duan Lingtian while looking at him. He nodded. As the three of them were ready to leave, they were stopped by a scream. Hold it right there. The scream was like a thunderstorm that came from above. Everyone snapped back to their senses one after another as they swiveled towards the source of the voice. The scream was traced back to two middle-aged men who descended from the sky ferociously. It was obvious that they had ill intentions. Inner Island disciples. Many of them looked serious and fear was apparent in their eyes when they saw the identity token hanging on the waists of the two middle-aged men. It's the both of you. Li Fei raised her beautiful eyebrows, despise clearly written on her face as she looked at them. What do you guys want from us? Ka looked a little horrified. The two Inner Island disciples of Hidden Fog Island who had just appeared were the same duo who had been bothering Li Fei and Ka ever since they arrived on the island. Both Ka or Li Fei hated the two Inner Island disciples from the bottom of their hearts. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian merely glanced at the two Inner Island disciples with grave coldness in his eyes. He did not seem to care about the two of them at all. The Inner Island disciples landed close to Duan Lingtian and the two ladies. They did not respond to Ka. Instead, they took a long, hard look at Duan Lingtian. One of the men said ambiguously, I was wondering why the junior sisters were so cold to us, so, they already have a fiancé. Another man looked at Duan Lingtian and mocked with jealousy and hatred, both the junior sisters are beautiful and you certainly are drop-dead gorgeous. What did this boy toy do to deserve to be their fiancé? The two Inner Island disciples had been following them ever since Li Fei and Ka left the southern island. However, they did not dare to get close to them since Shu Rong was there with them. Nevertheless, never had they thought that they would witness such a scene which angered them on the Hidden Fog City streets not long after following the both of them into the city. The two peerless beauties that they desired already had a fiancé. Moreover, their fiancé was one and the same. They could no longer suppress their rage when they realized that the too latest fiancé was just a boy toy. They brought their jealousy and hatred with them when they appeared. Who did he think he was? He was just a boy toy who had above-average looks, so how did he deserve these two peerless beauties? They were unwilling to yield. Furthermore, they felt gravely ashamed that the two beauties of their desires had chosen a boy toy like him over them. The inner island disciple who spoke earlier glared at Duan Lingtian in disdain. Junior sisters, let me tell you. Most of such boy toys are just nice to look at, but they're useless. If you're looking for a man, you should look for one who can protect you and provide you with a sense of security, he reminded Li Fei and Ka while looking at them with ill intentions. Who do you think you are? What does our taste in man have anything to do with you? Li Fei mocked. At the same time, she took a step forward and stood next to Duan Lingtian. She held his arm and leaned on his shoulder intimately. Chapter 1273, Ka followed suit and stood on the other side of Duan Lingtian. She reached out and held onto Duan Lingtian's arm. However, she did not lean on Duan Lingtian's shoulders like Li Fei did because she felt timider. At once, Duan Lingtian felt two fresh, fragrant aromas rush into his nose which made him relaxed and happy. Ka and Li Fei's demonstrative actions made the onlookers gaze toward the two inner island disciples with curiosity about their reactions. The faces of the inner island disciples turned gloomy. Let's go, Duan Lingtian called out softly to the two women beside him, and then they stepped into the air as they prepared to leave. However, the two inner island disciples blocked their way the minute they stepped into the air. What are you doing? Li Fei shouted coldly with anger on her face. She just wanted to find somewhere quiet and speak to her man about his experiences after being reunited with him. It was hard not to get mad when these two flies stopped them at a time like that. Ka looked incensed as well. For the first time, Duan Lingtian looked at both the inner island disciples in the eye as while he spoke softly but in an unquestionable tone, "Get lost." You've got quite a temper, sneered one of the inner island disciples at Duan Lingtian mockingly. Boy, I want to see for myself today, how can a toy boy like you be the fiancé to both our junior sisters? That's right, you'll have to prove your strength if you intend to win these beauties, echoed the other inner island disciple. What are you? He's the man that the both of us believe in. What does that have to do with you? Why should he prove himself to you? Li Fei sneered. Young master asked you to get lost, didn't you hear that? Even the usually good-tempered Ka had an extremely resentful expression as she glared at the two inner island disciples. The onlookers' gaze at the inner island disciples became weirder and weirder. Noticing that all eyes were on them, the faces of the inner island disciples turned glum as their glares at Duan Lingtian intensified more viciously. Junior sister Li Fei, don't say that, there are many things that you wouldn't be aware of since you're too involved. As bystanders, we'll see it more clearly than you do. One of the inner island disciples looked at Duan Lingtian with a cold gleam in his eyes and enunciated word for word, this toy boy isn't worthy of the both of you. Don't be fooled by his appearance. Without waiting for a response from Li Fei, the other inner island disciple looked at Duan Lingtian with a sneer. You dare to ask us to get lost? I'd really like to see how good you are. Why would both the junior sisters fancy you and ask you to be their fiancé? Instantly, after the inner island disciple finished his sentence, his robe bulged. It was the constantly rising origin energy in his body which transformed into milky white flames in the blink of an eye. Once the milky white flames appeared, it turned into a multicolored ball of energy. Obviously, apart from fully exerting his origin energy, this inner island disciple also exerted the various types of profundities he had comprehended. He stood there majestically in all his powerful splendor. That's right, I'd love to see how mighty he is too. The other inner island disciple came to his senses and echoed. The power in his body surged and created an imposing aura. Seeing that the two inner island disciples were prepared to attack, Li Fei's expression changed dramatically as she threatened in a cold voice, he's just like us. He's also a guest of the hidden fog island. The martial emperor behind him won't let you get away with it if you dare lay a finger on him. Although the heaven and earth energy there would not form a heaven and earth phenomenon because of the power emerging from them, she knew clearly in her heart that she was no match for the two inner island disciples of the hidden fog island. Ka was no match for them either. As for her fiancé, Duan Lingtian was probably just there to join in the fun like them even though he could come with a martial emperor powerhouse. Even if he was not there to join the fun, he would be, at most, an ordinary disciple of the martial emperor. There was no way he would be able to beat two hidden Fog Island Inner Island disciples who were equivalent to Martial Emperor's disciples. She did not dare to think about being a Martial Emperor's direct disciple. Along the way, she and Ka had many fortuitous meetings, but they were only 7th and 8th level martial monarchs. They had not even set foot into the 9th level martial monarch stage. Subconsciously, she did not think that her man would be much stronger than they were. Junior sister Li Fei, don't worry. We just want to spar with him. We won't kill him. One of the Inner Island disciples smiled brightly. The more Li Fei acted that way, the more he thought that she was just nervous, and the only reason for her nerves was that she knew that her fiancé was not as strong as he was. Those thoughts made him somewhat swollen-headed. Although we won't kill him, the attacks don't have eyes. If we accidentally destroy his Dantian, I think the Martial Emperor backing him wouldn't say anything, said the other disciple. In his words, he conveyed a clear, important message. Even if he could not kill Duan Lingtian, he would destroy his Dantian and render him useless. In his opinion, Li Fei and Ka definitely would not declare him as their fiancé after the toy boy lost his cultivation base even if he was very handsome. Then, he would have another chance to be with either Li Fei or Ka. Haha, that's it. The previous Inner Island disciple laughed wholeheartedly, pride filling his laughter. You dare. At that moment, Li Fei and Ka let go of Duan Lingtian's shoulder in unison. They took a step forward and stood in front of him to shield him behind them. Anyone who wants to hurt my man must step over my dead body. The origin energy around Li Fei's body surged as a variety of profundities followed like a shadow. She stared coldly at the two Inner Island disciples and showcased her heroism. Even though Ka did not say a word, but her actions undoubtedly showed that her intentions were in line with Li Fei's words. All of a sudden, someone could not help but call out, "Winner in life." A winner in life. That Duan Lingtian is absolutely a winner in life. His tone was filled with envy from the depths of his heart. Most of the people around them who were observant recalled Duan Lingtian's name when he introduced himself to Shu Rong, so they knew his name. He's indeed a winner in life. Not only does he have two gorgeous ladies as his fiancées, but both of them were even willing to die for him. It's already a blessing from his past life's cultivation to be able to meet a woman like that, and he has too. I'm so envious. All the men in the crowd were green with envy while they stared at Duan Lingtian. An acrid flame called jealousy was burning in their hearts. Since Li Fei and Ka decided to stand in front of Duan Lingtian and protect him, looking as if they were ready to fight as their lives depended on it, the faces of the two Inner Island disciples turned extremely morose. Would they dare to kill Li Fei and Ka? The answer was apparent, definitely not. If they were in a remote place, they might be able to kill them and prevent the Martial Emperor behind Li Fei and Ka from learning about what they had done. However, with so many onlookers right now, they would not dare to kill Li Fei and Ka even if they were given 100 doses of courage. They looked at each other and saw the affliction in their eyes. However, one of their eyes quickly lit up as if he had thought of a strategy. Li Fei and Ka's face sank when they saw their gazes. Although they did not know what their opponent was plotting against them, they could not help but worry about it. The Inner Island disciple whose eyes lit up stared at Duan Lingtian in the first instance, then he exclaimed and mocked sharply, "Oh damn, you really are a toy boy. You're destined to hide behind women for the rest of your life, depending on them to survive." As if they had discussed it, the other Inner Island disciple taunted, "If I were you, I'd dig a hole and hide. I wouldn't embarrass myself like this, like a man." "If I must say, he isn't a man at all," the former continued saying in agreement. While the two Inner Island disciples spoke, Li Fei and Ka turned more and more sullen. "Rascal, ignore them." "Yes, young master, they're provoking you on purpose. Just ignore them," reminded the two women instantly as they turned to look at Duan Lingtian. Although the two Inner Island disciples were indeed deliberately provoking Duan Lingtian, the eyes of the crowd also landed on him in unison. These gazes were either ironic or mocking or disdain or scornful. No one would look up to a man who hid behind women. "Coward, trash," the two Inner Island disciples added to the fire as if they were anxious to see chaos erupt. Contempt filled their gazes towards Duan Lingtian. "You're the only one who can be a man until such a stage. If it were up to me, you might as well hide under their skirts, you'd be safer like that." The two Inner Island disciples saw Duan Lingtian standing there while his face remained indifferent after a while. They were even motivated as they took turns to mock Duan Lingtian and trample on his dignity. They only had one purpose in mind, to provoke Duan Lingtian. Let him take the initiative to attack them. Then, they would have the chance of destroying Duan Lingtian's dantian and completely make him useless. The two of you, that enough barking from the two of you. Finally, Duan Lingtian made a move under everyone's watchful eyes. He slowly reached his little finger out and picked his ears with it while saying casually, "It's my first time seeing dogs that can bark for so long." As he spoke, he emphasized the word, dogs. Wow! He blew the world away with a single sentence and caused an uproar among the onlookers. Those scornful eyes which were on Duan Lingtian originally shifted, falling on the two inner island disciples as if they want to see how they would react. After all, they were degraded as if they were dogs. Chapter 1274. Dog. Did that toy boy just call them a dog? Instantly, the two inner island disciples felt their rage take over, leaving them almost senseless. Boy, do you want to die? They were furious as their strength surged and caused the air to stir. Waves of energy swept out along with a series of air explosions which sounded like detonating mines. It seemed to transform into a gust of raging wind that swept in all directions. The nearly irrational inner island disciples no longer thought of Li Fei and Ka. Their robes kept bulging and then disappearing with the swell of their power. Whoosh, whoosh, two figures flashed like lightning and headed straight for Duan Lingtian. They've made their move. Although most of the onlookers could not see their movements, upon vanishing, they realized that they had made a move. Now, we have something to see. While many of them were anxious to see chaos erupt, all of them edged farther away to watch the situation from a distance to avoid getting involved. At the same time, Duan Lingtian shifted leisurely as the two inner island disciples who charged towards him with great momentum. When he moved, he appeared in front of Li Fei and Ka, who stood alongside with each other and defended him from behind instead. Li Fei and Ka, who planned to fight the inner island disciples with their lives, sensed a flash in their eyes before a familiar back appeared in front of them. That's insanely fast. At once, they were shocked. Your efforts are futile. After they recovered from their shock upon witnessing Duan Lingtian's speed, his indifferent voice rang in their ears. Bang! Arg! At the same time, they heard a loud bang followed by a horrible shriek. No, to be precise, two horrible shrieks rented the air. It was hard to differentiate whether it came from one person or two because the screams rang out together. When they looked towards the source of the screams, they saw the bodies of the two inner island disciples shoot out like flying arrows and then smashing onto the ground. The power in their bodies was instantly annihilated as if it had never even existed. No, no, my dantian, you're ruthless, you're terribly ruthless. Soon, the onlookers including Li Fei and Ka saw that the disciples kept rolling around on the floor while crying out continuously. They soon gnashed their teeth as they glared at the purple-clad youth who stood in the air as if he was their mortal enemy who had killed their father and snatched their wives. Many people came to their senses and reacted. Their dantians have been destroyed. Previously, they said they wanted to destroy other people's dantian, who'd have known that their dantian would have been destroyed instead in just the blink of an eye. Duan Lingtian is terrifyingly strong. From the beginning to the end, I never even saw him move. Me too, I was looking at him the whole time but I couldn't see him budge at all. There was an uproar amongst the onlookers. When they looked at Duan Lingtian again, their gazes were laced with fear and admiration. At that time, Li Fei and Ka glanced at each other and saw the shock and awe in each other's eyes. Duan Lingtian completely ignored the fearful eyes of the surrounding people and the ferocious glare from the two inner island disciples. He turned around and called out to Li Fei and Ka, "Let's go." Both of them nodded obediently. Simultaneously, curiosity arose in their eyes. They were inextricably interested in their man's experience over the years. Judging from his strength, it was comparable to the strength of a martial emperor's direct disciple on the Cloud Continent. Such strength was definitely similar to the core disciples of the Hidden Fog Island. Naturally, he could easily destroy two inner island disciples. When the three of them walked away, the onlookers stared. Earlier, Duan Lingtian could have easily killed the two inner island disciples if he wanted to. However, he did not do so. If he had ended their lives, those who were present were bound to spread the news to even the ears of the senior officials of the Hidden Fog Island. Then, the senior official of the Hidden Fog Island would definitely be enraged. After all, if a disciple of the Hidden Fog Island were killed on the island, it would undoubtedly be humiliating for them. Still, Duan Lingtian was not afraid of any senior official of the Hidden Fog Island. He could always escape even if he could not match the senior officials who might not be able to react in time. However, if that were the case, it would mean that he would miss the prize of the Hidden Fog Martial competition, the Saint Stone. That was not the ending he wanted. To him, the two Inner Island disciples' lives were far less important than the Saint Stone. Hence, for the sake of the Saint Stone, he spared their lives but destroyed their Dantian to make their lives a living hell. The incident today was all because of them provoking him and even publicly proclaiming that they would destroy him Dantian. As such, his actions could be considered as self-defense. Even if the people from the Hidden Fog Island were mad, they would not dare to find fault with him publicly. After all, they did not have a reasonable cause to do so. When Duan Lingtian left with Li Fei and Ka, the two Inner Island disciples stared them down with angry eyes. They felt like the sky was collapsing on them. Having had their cultivation base destroyed, they were now destined to be mediocre. Just thinking of how they were reduced to their current state, they almost gritted their teeth until they were crushed while they glared at the three departing figures. The two Inner Island disciples were roaring in their hearts, "I'll never let you go, I'll never let all of you go." The onlookers finally came to their senses. Glancing at the two Inner Island disciples in pity, they soon dispersed after seeing the three figures leaving their line of sight. After the two Inner Island disciples retrieved some healing pills to consume, one of them growled angrily while grinding his teeth, "I want him and those two bitches to die. We must find a way to avenge ourselves." The other person demanded while fire burned in her eyes. "I swear I must avenge myself. Otherwise, I'm not worthy of being a person." Exchanging a hard look, they left the Hidden Fog City together and headed to the east of the Hidden Fog Island. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian brought Li Fei and Ka and left for the west of the Hidden Fog City. They only stopped when they reached above a vast forest. "Young master, you're so strong." Ka looked at Duan Lingtian in admiration. As usual, her face was flushed because of the excitement. "Rascal, how did you become so strong? I thought that after so many years, Sister Ka and I would have overtaken you. I never expected that we'd still be left behind by you." Li Fei had a bitter smile on her face as she thought about how childish her previous thoughts were. "Young master, how did you make it through all these years?" Ka asked curiously since she was very interested in what had happened to him these past few years. Li Fei also looked at Duan Lingtian with the same piqued interest. "These years." Duan Lingtian became quiet after hearing that and then he sighed, "Ever since I lost my memory, even though I've recovered bits of it, there are still some that haven't been restored. I only remember that I'm from the southern outer land, but I've forgotten everything else about the place." As Duan Lingtian spoke, he looked at Li Fei and Ka expectantly. "I think, the memory of us should belong to the part of memory from the southern outer land. Can you tell me about our past? Maybe I'll be able to remember something," he urgently pressed as he looked at Li Fei and Ka. He always wanted to know about his past, but he could never remember it. Now, he wanted to know about his past even more after meeting these two women who seemed familiar and affectionate towards him, even addressing themselves as his fiancé. He wanted to know how did they meet, how they got together and how they got engaged. "Let Sister Ka start. She knew you before I did." Li Fei looked at Ka encouragingly. "Young master, the first time I met you was on the streets of Fresh Breeze Town, during my darkest days, my most helpless moments. Back then, my mother had just died. She was my only family, so I even felt like the sky was falling. At that time, I only had one thought. No matter what happened, I had to give my mother a proper burial. Mother didn't get to enjoy her life when she was alive, so I couldn't let her suffer when she was dead. For the sake of my mother, I was selling myself on the streets to give her a proper burial." After she said that, Ka's face was already filled with tears. Then, she looked at Duan Lingtian and smiled. "That was when I met you, young master. You were the first one who was willing to pay for my mother's burial without judging my appearance. From then on, I knew that you were a good person. So, after I buried my mother, I decided to follow you even if you never intended for me to do so. It turns out that I made the right choice. After we arrived at the Li clan of Fresh Breeze Town, you and the missus treated me like family and took great care of me. From then on, I've regarded both of you as my only family in this world." While Ka spoke slowly, recollection gleamed in her eyes. "After that, I stayed at the Li clan of Fresh Breeze Town. I witnessed you rise all the way to become the top among the younger generation of Fresh Breeze Town. Not only that, you were later recommended by the Li clan of Fresh Breeze Town to the Li clan of Aurora City, which was also the original clan of the clan in the latter. That's where you met Sister Fair. Ka paused and then she looked at Li Fei beside her. Sister Li Fei, you can tell him what happened after that. Li Fei already knew what occurred after that. Chapter 1275. The both of them were traveling together the whole time when they were separated from Duan Lingtian. When they left, they did not have time to bid Duan Lingtian farewell, which was something they had often regretted in the days that followed. Then, Li Fei took over from Ka and continued recounting the memories to Duan Lingtian. The first time I saw you, you were at the Li clan's martial competition in Aurora City. She told him that when they first met, she did not have a good impression of him since she thought that he was very frivolous. Then she continued with his journey in Aurora City. Li Fei did not forget to mention the existence of the two little pythons. I never expected that I actually had such a wonderful journey when I was younger. Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart after listening to Li Fei's stories. After recounting the memories of Aurora City, Li Fei continued, after that, you went to the Iron Blood Army's genius camp of the Crimson Sky Kingdom and stayed there for a while. Then, you returned to us and we went to the Imperial City together and built a home there. Following that, Li Fei recounted his experience at the Imperial City one at a time, including the time he spent at the Paladin Academy, the Divine Might Marquis Estate, the Duan Clan Estate, and the Imperial family of the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Naturally, Li Fei only related what she knew. At that time, you led the Crimson Sky Kingdom's army and conquered the neighboring kingdom's city without wasting a single pawn. You were like the god of war to them. Almost everyone from the Crimson Sky Kingdom has heard of you, Li Fei said, her eyes turning fiery. That was her man, she was so proud of him. At the height of your fame at the Crimson Sky Kingdom, you decided to leave the Crimson Sky Kingdom for the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Immediately, you locked onto the #1 sect of the 5 largest sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the 7-Star Sword Sect. On the way to 7-Star Sword Sect, we met Little Gold. Li Fei then paused. Little Gold, what's that? Duan Lingtian looked puzzled. Little Gold is a rodent demon. In your words, it's the jade-eyed heavenly mouse or something, Li Fei said. What, jade-eyed heavenly mouse? Duan Lingtian could not help but feel surprised when he heard the phrase. Although he did not recall most of his memories, he still knew a thing or two about the jade-eyed heavenly mouse. He understood that it was a powerful demon that could easily break through to the martial emperor stage when it matured. And he had met a jade-eyed heavenly mouse. Soon after, Duan Lingtian calmed his slightly agitated mood because Li Fei had moved on and continued. What happened subsequently was none other than the incidents at the first of the 5 largest sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the 7-Star Sword Sect. In between, Li Fei also remembered to tell him about the other events, such as that time when they left the 7-Star Sword Sect for the ancient city of Everlast and met Zhang Shouyang and his wife, Wang Chong there. Finally, Li Fei reached the part where Ka and she left with the peak master of the 7-Star Sword Sect's Alcade Peak, Qing Shang. They thought it was an ordinary birthday celebration, and they never expect to stay at the Yin-Yang sect after that. The Yin-Yang sect? Duan Lingtian frowned. Rascal, you know of the Yin-Yang sect? Li Fei asked puzzledly. Ka also studied him with a concerned expression and asked, Young master, what's wrong with you? In the memories of Restored, I've been to the Yin-Yang sect, however, I couldn't remember why I went there. Why can't I remember it now? Duan Lingtian kept shaking his head. He always felt that that part of memory he had restored was incomplete. The small part which was incomplete seemed to be the most important part. Young master, you've been to the Yin-Yang sect? Ka could not help but feel surprised. Yes, I have. Duan Lingtian nodded. In my memories, I seem to have killed the peak master of Yang Peak from the Yin-Yang sect, Yang Hong. I think, his son was killed too. However, why did I kill him? Duan Lingtian furrowed his brows as he murmured. What, Yang Hong and his son are dead? When Duan Lingtian said that, Li Fei and Ka were astounded. After their initial shock, excitement was apparent on their faces. Yang Hong and his son were their mortal enemies. They still remembered that they were able to escape from the Yin-Yang sect because their senior sister Yang Shui had fought to stop Yang Hong with her life. That act had saved their lives. After that, even when they headed north and joined Yuhan Valley, they wanted to avenge their senior sister Yang Shui and their master. Their master, the peak master of the Yin Peak, had been stabbed in the back and killed by Yang Hong. However, both Li Fei and Ka never expected that the mortal enemy they desperately wanted to kill would already be dead. In fact, their fiancé was the one who killed him. No. Suddenly, Li Fei seemed to remember something as her beautiful face tensed. Sister Fair, do you think the people who were searching for us back then were really sent by young master? Ka asked. Li Fei took a deep breath. Finally, Ka shared her thoughts. She still remembered that when Ka and she were in hiding after escaping from the Yin-Yang sect, there was something or someone who came looking for them while mentioning their fiancé's name. However, they thought that it was a trap, so they had not shown themselves. Later, many people including the Supreme Elder and the two greatest Vice Peak Masters of the Yang Peak had come looking for them, saying that their fiancé, Duan Lingtian, had killed Yang Hong and his son. At that time, they had not believed them. They thought it was Yang Hong and his son conspiring to lure them out. Rascal, when did you arrive at the Yin-Yang sect? Li Fei took a deep breath and asked. Once Duan Lingtian could tell her when he reached the Yin-Yang sect, she would know whether what Ka and her faced was true or not. I think it's, Duan Lingtian thought for a moment and said the approximate time when he arrived at the Yin-Yang sect. Boom. For a time, no matter Li Fei or Ka were dumbstruck as if they were struck by thunder. They took a while to recover from the shock. Sister Fair, at that time, it really was the young master. Ka looked at Li Fei and said with conflicted eyes. We missed it by just a little. If we hadn't continued hiding and shown ourselves then, we would have been reunited with Rascal, Li Fei sighed while regretting their choice back then. Sister Fair, you know the situation back then, we couldn't afford to take any risks at that time, Ka comforted Li Fei. Rascal, since you went to the Yin-Yang sect right after we left, and killed Yang Hong and his son, when you killed them, did you see senior sister Yang Shui? Li Fei looked at Duan Lingtian and asked eagerly. So, I went to the Yin-Yang sect for them. At that time, Duan Lingtian had guessed the purpose of his visit to the Yin-Yang sect back then, he had gone to find his fiancés. Yang Shui, hearing Li Fei's question, Duan Lingtian looked confused. Who's that? After Li Fei briefly described Yang Shui's features, Duan Lingtian understood. Both of you are talking about that person, she was dead when I arrived. Dead. Even though they were mentally prepared, Li Fei and Ka still could not help but change their expressions dramatically when they confirmed Yang Shui's death from Duan Lingtian. 2 lines of tears fell from their faces respectively, making them look a bit haggard. However, I had preserved her body in an ice coffin made from 10,000-year frost. Earlier, when remembered those, I couldn't remember the reason why I did it. As Duan Lingtian said, he couldn't help but sigh. Now, it seems like that's related to the both of you. Huh. While Li Fei and Ka were upset about Yang Shui's death, Duan Lingtian suddenly stayed still and furrowed his brows. At the same time, he felt a slight tingling sensation in the depths of his mind. That tingling sensation made him tremble involuntarily. Simultaneously, he found out that there were a lot of fragmented memories flying past in his mind. These memories seemed to be his memories which he had not recovered. The fragmented memories were so numerous and crowded. He intended to piece them together but it was very difficult. Ah! At that moment, the tingling sensation suddenly amplified. Duan Lingtian could not bear it and screeched. He only felt a splitting headache as if his head was being torn open. Rascal! Young master! Li Fei and Ka were startled, and they immediately stopped mourning for Yang Shui as they turned towards Duan Lingtian in concern. After Duan Lingtian screeched, there was a sudden change. His whole body shook violently as if something terrible had happened to him. At the same time, his pair of eyes became dull like he had become a living dead. Instantly, Li Fei and Ka were anxious. They did not know what had happened earlier, so they did not know why he would suddenly become like that. On the Hidden Fog Island's eastern island, the 2 inner island disciples who had their Dantian destroyed finally walked back to the eastern island with their 2 feet. Their Dantian had been destroyed and they had lost all their origin energy so they could not control the air and fly. However, with their various profundities, they were not very slow and had quickly reached the eastern island, the place where they used to cultivate. However, this time, they did not return to where they used to cultivate. They knew clearly in their hearts that they were no longer qualified to stay on the east of the island. They came back with only one purpose: revenge. Senior brother Chen has always been a lecherous man. Since we couldn't get the 2 bitches, we'll destroy them. One of the inner island disciples angrily said. Chapter 1276. Ouch. It hurts. Duan Lingtian's hands gripped his head which felt like it was being split into half as a beast-like growl escaped from his mouth. At that moment, he seemed like a wounded animal. Suddenly, he was sweating as though it was raining. Clack, 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 comma. Duan Lingtian's teeth kept chattering and making strange sounds that would creep out anyone who heard it. Rascal, young master. Li Fei and Ka stood aside, feeling anxious because they did not know what possessed him, but they did not dare to act rashly. They could only look at him worriedly. Their hearts ached when they looked at him sweltering profusely. He obviously seemed to be in extreme pain. If the pain could be transferred, they would not have hesitated to shift their man's pain to themselves and not let him suffer. Currently, one scene after another flashed in Duan Lingtian's mind. Those scenes were fragments of his past memories. He could not help but growl in a low voice. As the scenes flashed faster and faster, he felt like his head seemed to be exploding. Soon, another voice spoke in Duan Lingtian's mind. The tone was laced with shock and incredibility. Hell, boy, what is your soul made of? It was Wang Ba. At this rate, your soul will probably recover in 15 minutes, at the most. As though he had just seen a ghost, Wang Ba said, you really are a monster. Throughout my entire life, this is the first time seeing a monster like you who can repair his own soul so quickly. However, Duan Lingtian did not seem to hear Wang Ba's words, or rather, he could not afford to divert his attention and listen to anything or anyone else. All he could feel was that splitting headache as he seemed to have lost all sense of his surroundings. He probably would not be able to defend himself even if someone wanted to kill him then. Rascal, young master. Li Fei and Ka could only watch nervously as tears started to roll down their faces. Time passed by silently. After a quarter of an hour, the low-pitched growls disappeared and the teeth chattering stopped. Duan Lingtian's body also finally stopped shaking violently and he finally regained some peace. Although he had calmed down, blood continued to flow out from his mouth. His chattering teeth had torn his mouth and blood gushed out. More relaxed now, he exhaled a huge sigh of relief. Currently, he looked like he had been caught in a heavy downpour. All his clothes were drenched wet in his cold sweat. Seeing that he had finally calmed down, Li Fei and Ka were relieved, but they flew towards him immediately upon seeing that his mouth was still bleeding. At once, he felt 2 trails of fragrance in his face, along with 2 whiffs of the same medicinal aroma. Grade 1 Life Recovery Pills. With any hesitation, Duan Lingtian opened his mouth and consumed both pills delivered by the 2 women. Moments later, his bleeding stopped. If anyone else had seen that scene, they would have definitely yelled at them for wasting such precious pills. The crack in his mouth and the bleeding were merely exterior injuries, so they could be stopped by a grade 9th gold injury pill in the blink of an eye. Wah! While the origin energy on Duan Lingtian's body surged, he dried his soaking wet clothes in a moment by making the water in it evaporate. After that, he reached both his hands out and moved forward to grab Li Fei and Ka into his arms before they even regained their senses. A bright smile appeared on his face as he pushed his cheek to their heads. Ka, little Feier, we've been apart for all these years. You must have missed me, haven't you? Tisk, I didn't miss you. Li Fei, who could not react in time to his sneak attack, responded subconsciously. However, she was stunned right after she finished her sentence because she sensed that there was something amiss in his tone. She suddenly recalled the feelings she had when she was with Duan Lingtian in the past. She had a gut feeling that her man seemed to be back. More accurately, her previous man was back. Young master, have you recovered your memory? Ka also noticed the changes in Duan Lingtian and asked in surprise. Yes, I've recovered. Duan Lingtian nodded while grinning. After the torture for a full quarter of an hour, his soul was finally healed at an extremely fast rate. When his soul recovered, naturally, his memories recovered too. The second his splitting headache left, his current memories perfectly merged with his past recollections. He completely remembered everything. The 2 women standing before him were his 2 fiancées he had been dreaming of for years, whom he regarded as important as his own life. After his acknowledgement, they hugged him tightly with tear marks streaked on their faces as they smiled while leaning on his shoulder. The atmosphere turned romantic from that moment onwards. The women refused to move even after half a day had passed. They were still quietly leaning on him. If it were up to them, they hoped that that moment would last forever. How wonderful to be able to hold their lover until the end of the world. Duan Lingtian held onto Li Fei and Ka tightly while he took turns to rub his face against theirs, full of affection. After a while, Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Ka, little Fair, as you said earlier, when I arrived at the Yin-Yang sect and killed the peak master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong sent his men out to look for you. You mean the both of you were still there? Yes. Li Fei nodded. We were there when the Yang Peak Supreme Elder and both Vice Peak Masters came looking for us. However, we thought it was Yang Hong and his son's conspiracy. That's really Fortune's fool, Duan Lingtian sighed. Does that mean that you've heard the news about the Lingtian sect and which I ordered them to spread? We've heard about it. Back then, we thought Yang Hong and his son just wanted to draw us in. Li Fei nodded and then sighed. Come to think of it, I was being too sensitive. If I could have stayed to verify it, we would have been reunited. Under such circumstances, you were right to be careful. Besides, we're reunited now, aren't we? Duan Lingtian said while smiling. Also, I avenged your senior sister Yang Shui and your master, Duan Lingtian added. Rascal, thank you. Li Fei took a deep breath and tightened her arms around him. Ka stood up slowly and bowed in the direction of the while she held onto Duan Lingtian's arm and murmured, Master, senior sister, the person who killed the both of you is now dead. May you rest in peace. At once, Duan Lingtian and Li Fei also bowed in the direction of the Cloud Continent. Master, senior sister, he is Sister Ka's and my man and he avenged the both of you. Li Fei looked in the direction of the Cloud Continent and said faintly. All of a sudden, tears fell from Li Fei and Ka's faces again. Obviously, they were reminded about the past of their master and senior sister at the Yin-Yang sect. Tell me about the time after you left the southern area of the inner land in the Cloud Continent, Duan Lingtian asked to divert their attention after sensing their grief. He then learned about what had happened to them from their very own lips. They had headed north all the way and went through a lot of hardships before eventually arriving at the northern area of the inner land of the Cloud Continent safely. Then they managed to join Yuhan Valley. Speaking of Yuhan Valley, your strength shouldn't be sufficient to represent the valley to join the Hidden Fog Martial competition, shouldn't it? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. His spiritual energy had discovered Li Fei and Ka's current cultivation base. Li Fei was a 7th level martial monarch while Ka was an 8th level martial monarch. Their improvement shocked Duan Lingtian, but given their strength, they should not have the opportunity to participate in the Hidden Fog Martial competition. Speaking of that, this was all possible because of you, Li Fei said. All because of me? Duan Lingtian could not help but be stunned. Little Fair, what do you mean? I don't know Martial Emperor Yuhan of Yuhan Valley. Young master, it was because of the Han Bing's divine sword technique, Ka explained. Han Bing's divine sword technique? What's wrong with the Han Bing's divine sword technique? Duan Lingtian was even more puzzled. Obviously, he knew of the Han Bing's divine sword technique since it was a top cultivation method from his combined memories of the rebirth martial emperor. Naturally, it was just a top cultivation method on the Cloud Continent. Moreover, he remembered that he was the one who had passed the Han Bing's divine sword technique to Ka back then. However, he could not understand how the Han Bing's divine sword technique would be related to the reason Ka and Li Fei were there. Rascal, I'm afraid you'll never guess. Our current master is Martial Emperor Yuhan and the cultivation method she has is the Han Bing's divine sword technique. Li Fei continued excitedly. What? After listening to Li Fei's revelation, Duan Lingtian could not help but exclaim in shock. Then, he muttered, unless Martial Emperor Yuhan was related to the Frost Martial Emperor. No, the Frost Martial Emperor was from 20,000 years ago. Even if she were to be related to Martial Emperor Yuhan, it must be a very distant connection. Perhaps, the Martial Emperor Yuhan knew about the Han Bing's divine sword technique because of the inheritance of the Frost Martial Emperor. As Duan Lingtian thought about it, he was quite convinced. Naturally, he thought so because of the rebirth Martial Emperor's logic from his memories. Just because Ka cultivated the Han Bing's divine sword technique, she was willing to bring the both of you to the Hidden Fog Island. He felt that it was rather ridiculous. Chapter 1277. Rascal, you're mistaken. Little sister Ka was immediately taken in as a personal disciple by Martial Emperor Yuhan because she was cultivating the Frost God's sword technique, Li Fei told Duan Lingtian. I've forgotten about that. You've just said that both you and Ka are personal disciples of the Martial Emperor Yuhan. It is not surprising that Ka became the personal disciple of Martial Emperor Yuhan due to the Frost God's sword technique. How did you join her? Duan Lingtian asked with a face filled with doubt. He understood both Ka and Li Fei. Both their talents and strength were definitely insufficient to convince the Martial Emperor Yuhan to accept them as her personal disciples. There must have been some other reason. He already knew the reason Martial Emperor Yuan had taken Ka as her personal disciple, but the reason Li Fei was included simply eluded Duan Lingtian. That was because Ka insisted on it. She refused to be Martial Emperor Yuan's personal disciple if she did not take me in as a personal disciple as well. Li Fei looked towards Ka and said. You mean it's that easy to bargain with Martial Emperor Yuan? Duan Lingtian raised his eyebrow in surprise. Actually, I was quite startled at that moment. Logically speaking, from a martial emperor's point of view, it is the person's good fortune to be accepted as a personal disciple. She definitely wouldn't be happy if that said person wanted to bargain and negotiate the terms. However, Martial Emperor Yuan wasn't upset when Ka stated her terms. She even agreed to her terms as soon as she stated them, Li Fei said. I see. Then, there were only two possibilities, Duan Lingtian said. Either Martial Emperor Yuan really wanted Ka to be her personal disciple, that's why she was willing to make the concession, or perhaps Martial Emperor Yuan has an ulterior motive. Did any of you notice anything strange about Martial Emperor Yuan after you became her personal disciples? Duan Lingtian asked Li Fei and Ka. Now that you mention it, something was slightly weird, Li Fei said after a moment of contemplation. She seemed exceptionally interested in you. Me? Duan Lingtian was startled. Yup. Li Fei nodded. She's asked me about you more than once, but she seemed to have some reservations. I didn't feel that anything was amiss at that time. However, it seemed a little weird after thinking about it now. Has Master asked you about young Master too, Sister Li Fei? Ka was surprised. Ka, from what you said, did Martial Emperor Yuan ask you about me too? Duan Lingtian questioned. Yup. Ka nodded and added, what happened with me was pretty similar to what Sister Li Fei said. Did you mention to Martial Emperor Yuan that the Frost God's sword technique which you're cultivating was from me, Ka? Duan Lingtian asked further. Ka nodded yet again. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes after that confirmation and a flash of glimmer crossed his eyes. For now, I'm certain that your master, Martial Emperor Yuan, has an ulterior motive for taking the both of you as her personal disciples. My guess is that she might even desire something I have, Duan Lingtian said to Li Fei and Ka. Or else, she wouldn't have asked both of you information about me. Maybe she knows some of my secrets. Duan Lingtian raised his guard as he put the information he obtained together. Young Master, are you saying that Master has an ulterior motive? Ka raised her guard as well since she trusted Duan Lingtian unconditionally. As for Martial Emperor Yuan, the total amount of time she spent with her was less than half a day even though she was her personal disciple. Li Fei looked towards Duan Lingtian as well. Duan Lingtian looked at Ka and Li Fei with a straight face and spoke in a serious tone. Ka, Li Fei, I think it's time for me to tell you both something. Don't scare me, young master. Ka's pretty face turned grave after seeing his straight face. Although Li Fei's face remained expressionless, both her brows were pressed together tightly. She was also very curious as to what he was going to say next as well. Ka, you've been with me the longest, you must have heard of stories about me before you followed me during the time I was at the Li clan's estate in Fresh Breeze Town. Duan Lingtian looked at Ka. Yes, Ka nodded. She remembered overhearing his tragic past from the Li clan disciples when she first followed him to the Li clan estate in Fresh Breeze Town. However, after she followed him, he became extraordinary. Apart from being high profile, Duan Lingtian showed prospect and talent to become the up-and-coming young talent in Fresh Breeze Town. She had her suspicions at that time that the rumors of her young master's tragic past were purely forged. Actually, I had a rare encounter before I knew you. That encounter provided me with an opportunity to merge with the memory of a martial emperor, Duan Lingtian shared honestly while looking at Ka. He was talking about the incident whereby he had merged with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. However, he did not bring his past life up. It was because Duan Lingtian did not trust both the women. Li Fei and Ka were his fiancés, he was even willing to offer his life for them. He was afraid that he would scare the both of them. After all, it might be too much for Li Fei and Ka to digest the news as it was extremely bizarre. Rebirth Martial Emperor. 3 Lives Rebirth Technique. The Rebirth Martial Emperor picked young master for his 3rd rebirth, intending to occupy your body and replace you, didn't he, young master? Ka was shocked and her face paled. That legendary person from 20,000 years ago, it's incredible that the Rebirth Martial Emperor could have survived 20,000 years with a technique. Li Fei was shocked as well, and she took a deep breath to soothe her nerves. After that, Duan Lingtian explained the rebirth martial emperor's past and his achievements in the weapons refinement Dao, medicine refinement Dao, and inscription Dao to Ka and Li Fei. No wonder you aren't only proficient in weapons refinement and medicine refinement. You're also adept in inscription. Now, I know it was all due to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Li Fei suddenly exclaimed. Previously, she actually thought her fiancé was an all-rounded talent. I guess the rebirth martial emperor wouldn't have guessed that he would fail during his third rebirth and give the memories and experiences from his past 2 lives to you as a gift, young master, Ka said excitedly. Finally, Ka knew the origins of the Frost God's sword technique. The rebirth martial emperor had won the technique from another martial emperor known as Martial Emperor Han Bing. Rascal, do you think that the rebirth martial emperor was the reason that Martial Emperor Yuhan asked Ka and me about you? Li Fei guessed. I have the same suspicion as well. The fact that Martial Emperor Yuhan knew the complete Frost God's sword technique shows that she was somehow related to the Martial Emperor Yuhan, or maybe she inherited it from the Martial Emperor Yuhan. Duan Lingtian's eyes started to gleam as brightly as the stars in the night sky as he continued to infer, can we make that assumption that Martial Emperor Yuhan obtained the Martial Emperor Han Bing's inheritance, and in her inheritance there were records of the rebirth Martial Emperor? Li Fei guessed. In addition to that, Martial Emperor Han Bing also stated in her inheritance how the rebirth Martial Emperor had obtained her cultivation methods. Martial Emperor Yuhan asked about you because she suspected that you're the third reincarnation of the rebirth Martial Emperor. Maybe she knows that the rebirth Martial Emperor was a royal-grade alchemist back in the day from messages left by Martial Emperor Han Bing, Li Fei continued guessing. That's a possibility. Duan Lingtian nodded. Young master, I recalled something. Before leaving Yuhan Valley for the Hidden Fog Island, I accidentally entered the forbidden area of Yuhan Valley. Suddenly, Ka piped up. The forbidden area of Yuhan Valley. Duan Lingtian was taken by surprise. There were only 2 people in Yuhan Valley who were allowed to enter the forbidden area. Martial Emperor Yuhan was one of them and the other was Senior Sister Shurong, Li Fei said. Senior Sister Shurong, the woman in green who was with the both of you previously? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Yes, she's Senior Sister Shurong. Apart from that, Shurong was also Martial Emperor Yuhan's first personal disciple. Martial Emperor Yuhan regarded her highly. Rumor has it that she was also a martial emperor. Li Fei added. Senior Sister Shurong brought me out the last time I accidentally entered the forbidden area. However, I still managed to see an ice sculpture of a woman when I was in there, Ka said. An ice sculpture? Duan Lingtian and Li Fei were stunned. Yeah, Ka nodded. That sculpture is a woman standing with a sword in her hands. At that time, I only took a glance at it. However, I can tell the ice sculpture has been there for quite a while. It was possible Yuhan Valley inherited the sculpture. Does the sculpture of the woman holding the sword have any particular facial characteristics? Duan Lingtian asked. There's a sword-shaped marking in between the woman's eyebrows, but I'm unsure whether it was an effect of the ice, Ka said. Sword-shaped marking, in between her eyebrows. Duan Lingtian sighed as he skimmed through the rebirth Martial Emperor's memories. Finally, he managed to confirm the identity of the ice sculpture. The ice sculpture belonged to Martial Emperor Han Bing, who had fought with the rebirth Martial Emperor in the past. She was widely recognized as a natural sword cultivator as she had a sword-shaped marking in between her eyebrows. An ice sculpture of Martial Emperor Han Bing. It must have been there for a long time. Duan Lingtian paused for a moment before continuing. The way I see it, Martial Emperor Yuhan shouldn't have obtained Martial Emperor Han Bing's inheritance. It was more likely that her predecessors of Yuhan Valley were the ones who had obtained them. Did she build Yuhan Valley by herself? Duan Lingtian asked. No, I'm sure of that. Both Li Fei and Ka knew the answer to that question. In the meantime, after Shu Rong left Hidden Fog City, she immediately headed towards Yuhan Valley's campsite in the southern island of the Hidden Fog Island to look for Martial Emperor Yuhan while Duan Lingtian was discussing her with Ka and Li Fei. Master, Junior Sister Ka and Junior Sister Li Fei's fiancé have appeared, Shu Rong reported with a reverent and respectful manner. Martial Emperor Yuhan's breathing instantly quickened and she became incited after listening to Shu Rong's report. Chapter 1278, Ka and Li Fei's fiancé. Wasn't that the person who was suspected to be the reincarnation of the rebirth Martial Emperor? The rebirth Martial Emperor was a powerhouse who had stood at the summit of the Cloud Continent more than 20,000 years ago. Other than having horrifying martial strength, he was a heaven-defying alchemist too. Until now, she had never heard of any alchemist in the Cloud Continent who could break through the shackles of a Grade 1 alchemist and enter the quasi-royal grade alchemist, let alone become a royal grade alchemist. 20,000 years ago, the rebirth martial emperor had been a royal grade alchemist. In that era, he could be deemed as a person who was so powerful that he even had nature under his thumb. Nobody could reach the level of his prosperity in the limelight. Martial Emperor Yuan knew all of this. Not only that, but she also knew that the rebirth martial emperor had cultivated a set of heaven-defying cultivation methods that was called the 3 lives rebirth technique. He needed to undergo 3 reincarnations before he could successfully cultivate it completely. After 20,000 years, it was about time for the 3rd reincarnation of the rebirth martial emperor to show up now. According to the message left behind by Martial Emperor Han Bing, at that moment when she was about to die, other than herself, she had only passed on the Han Bing's divine sword technique to the rebirth martial emperor alone. After that, my Yuhan Valley came to obtain the legacy that Martial Emperor Han Bing left behind. In other words, other than the rebirth martial emperor in Yuhan Valley, nobody else out there in the world knows about this Han Bing's divine sword technique at all. In Yuhan Valley, the Han Bing's divine sword technique is only passed on to the next valley master. It isn't allowed to be spread out at all. In this case, we can deduce that Ka's Han Bing's divine sword technique must have been passed by the rebirth martial emperor to her, or to be more precise, by the 3rd reincarnation of the rebirth martial emperor. Yet, according to Ka, the Han Bing's divine sword technique that she cultivates was passed on to her by her fiancé. At once, thousands of thoughts ran amok in Martial Emperor Yuhan's mind. In the end, the conclusion that she obtained was, Ka's fiancé must be the 3rd reincarnation of the rebirth martial emperor. Looking at Shu Rong with her eyes burning brightly, Martial Emperor Yuhan asked in a state like she had lost her cool, "Where is he?" It was no surprise that she lost it. After all, although the 3rd reincarnation of the rebirth martial emperor had not come to be fully grown yet, he was still a one-of-a-kind treasure to her, for he was not just a royal grade alchemist but a former martial emperor too. When the rebirth martial emperor was still in his 1st reincarnation, he was a martial emperor who stood at the summit of the Cloud Continent, and during his 2nd reincarnation, he must have become a martial emperor too if there had been no unseen circumstances. Not only that, he had most likely surpassed his 1st reincarnation. Before he had been reborn into his 3rd reincarnation, having undergone 2 reincarnations, he must have left behind some items for his 3rd reincarnation. There must be a lot of things that she itched to have among those items. For this reason, Martial Emperor Yuhan was desperate to look for the 3rd reincarnation of the rebirth martial emperor so that she could control him and snatch his spatial ring away before making him her slave. Just thinking about how a royal grade alchemist could become her slave was enough to elicit an inexplicable sense of excitement in Martial Emperor Yuhan's heart. He's in the Hidden Fog City together with junior sister Ka and junior sister Li, Shu Rong replied. Hidden Fog City? Martial Emperor Yuhan nodded. The next instance, without even noticing her making any movement, she had already vanished from the spot before Shu Rong's eyes, stunning Shu Rong for a moment. Master actually went by herself. It looks like there's something Duan Lingtian has that Master is really interested in, Shu Rong thought to herself. Even though she had already been suspicious before this, her master's actions only confirmed her doubts. Just as Shu Rong's mind was engrossed in her thoughts, Martial Emperor Yuhan was already on the way to the Hidden Fog City. Wherever she passed through, the fog was swept away, opening up a path for her. At her speed, it did not take her long for her to reach the Hidden Fog City successfully. However, her trip this time was destined to be unfruitful. Be it Duan Lingtian, Ka, or Li Fei, all 3 of them were no longer in the Hidden Fog City now. Not only that, they had already deliberately gone far away. However, very soon, Martial Emperor Yuhan came to hear about Duan Lingtian's commotion in the Hidden Fog City, crippling 2 inner land disciples of the Hidden Fog Island. As expected of the 3rd reincarnation of the rebirth martial emperor. He's already so high profile before he's even fully matured yet, Martial Emperor Yuhan muttered to herself. After she learned from some of the folks there that Duan Lingtian, Ka, and Li Fei had long left the Hidden Fog City, she proceeded to leave the Hidden Fog City as well and did not wait around to search for them. Although the Hidden Fog Island was not big, it was still not easy to look for 3 people. Martial Emperor Yuhan returned to the southern island and the residence that the Hidden Fog Island had prepared for them to stay. After she came back, she went to look for Shu Rong again. Tell me everything about when you met Ka and Li Fei's fiancé. Seeing Martial Emperor Yuhan return by herself with a glum look on her face, Shurong dared not slack and instantly told the ins and outs of the scenario when she met Duan Lingtian, not hiding a thing at all. As a glimmer flashed across Martial Emperor Yuhan's eyes, she muttered softly, then, in this case, he must have followed one of the martial emperors or demon emperors from the Cloud Continent to the Hidden Fog Island then. It must be so, Shurong nodded. Duan Ling Tian, Martial Emperor spelled out his name word for word. The brilliance in her eyes shone even brighter now. Duan Ling Tian, the third reincarnation of the rebirth Martial Emperor. Right at this second, Martial Emperor Yuhan had formed her conclusion. At the eastern side of the Hidden Fog Island, in a valley that was decorated with beautiful scenery, some obscene sounds were resonating ceaselessly. This sound was enough to make any shy person blush instantly. A young, sturdy, large-built man was indulging in the most primal act with a sexy, young woman. The woman was bending over a large stone while the young man was ramming her non-stop from the behind like he was riding a horse. The lewd moans were coming out from the young woman's mouth. Somehow, some time passed before the young man suddenly increased his speed. Finally, with a grunt, his body shuddered violently and it was a long time before he finally regained his calmness. As for the woman, she was like a dead fish lying on the large stone. It turned out that she had already passed out instead. After casting a glance at the woman who had quite an incredible body, the young man raised a hand. A long robe appeared before he threw it around his body. Suddenly, as though he had noticed something, the young man gazed out of the valley. Senior Brother Chen. At the same time, two voices cried out in unison. It resonated from outside of the valley and clearly entered the young man's ears. Whoosh! Upon hearing this, the young man raised a brow and made his move swiftly. Seemingly transforming into a gale of wind, he charged out of the valley and reached the outside. It's the two of you. After he had exited the valley, the young man hovering in the sky cast a glance at the two middle-aged men standing on the floor nonchalantly. Spill, why are you two looking for me? As a core disciple of the Hidden Fog Island, he also had a few Inner Land disciples followers under him. The two people in front were exactly his followers. Senior Brother Chen, our Dantian is crippled. One of the middle-aged men replied with grief and resent. The depths of his eyes were filled with a sharp cold brilliance as though he was about to devour somebody. The young man who was called Senior Brother Chen was Chen Ji, the core disciple of the Hidden Fog Island. Other than having a shocking martial strength and having already long broken through to Martial Emperor stage, Chen Ji had another hobby, women. When it came to the name Chen Ji, almost everyone on the Hidden Fog Island would more or less know about him. Chen Ji was a core disciple of the Hidden Fog Island. He was promiscuous and he could not live without women. It was said that he would carry out the sexual deeds at least twice every day. Not only that, he would only go for extremely beautiful women. What's the matter? Chen Ji asked with a frown. As the saying went, you must at least look who the owner is before you beat the dog. After knowing that his two followers had their Dantian crippled, wrath boiled in his heart right away. Senior Brother Chen, you must take revenge for us. This time, it's for your sake that we offended that guy. However, it never crossed our minds that he'd be so ruthless and actually cripple our Dantian directly, the other middle-aged man answered with an infuriated look. For my sake, Chen Ji frowned even more. Hurry and tell me, what actually happened? Senior Brother Chen, not long ago, the two of us were responsible for welcoming a martial emperor who came from the Cloud Continent and the 10 disciples under her. The middle-aged man took a deep breath and told the story as he suppressed the flame of fury in his chest. Then, the martial emperor that we welcomed was a woman from the Cloud Continent. She was Martial Emperor Yuhan. The 10 disciples that Martial Emperor Yuhan brought with her were all female disciples. The moment the middle-aged man reached this part, Chen Ji's eyes lit up right away. His full attention had completely been gripped now. All female disciples. In the depth of Chen Ji's eyes, a lusty glow shone brightly. Among the 10 female disciples that Martial Emperor Yuhan brought with her, there were 2 female disciples who were so beautiful that they put flowers to shame and outshone the moon. Wait a minute, they were so beautiful that they could even topple nations. As the middle-aged man narrated, he exaggerated even more. I've lived for so many years and this is the first time seeing such a beautiful woman. And it's 2 of them at the same time on top of that. Me too. Each of the 2 women had looks that could be said to be unparalleled in this world. The words, a reigning beauty of rare charm, is extremely suitable for them, the other middle-aged man piped in too. When he was speaking, his eyes gleamed with brilliance. Are they really that beautiful? Long before the middle-aged man started telling the story, Chen Ji's gaze had already lit up like an array of stars. When the second man added in, his breath started to become rapid. His eyes that were gleaming brightly had gushes of flame burning in them now. In his entire life, he was only interested in two things. 1. Cultivation. 2. Woman. To a person like him who could not live without women, beautiful women were his fountain of youth. How could we possibly be dare to deceive you, senior brother Chen? One of the men quickly responded. I know you wouldn't dare to deceive me too. However, I'm greatly interested in them, so tell me now. Where are they? Chen Ji's tone was filled with a slight desperation. Senior brother Chen, we originally wanted to invite them over to the eastern island to see you. Who would have ever thought that a guy would suddenly appear halfway, and not only did he cripple our cultivation base, he even said that you're not worthy enough to have them, senior brother Chen. The other middle-aged man replied with righteous indignation. Chapter 1279, Not worthy enough to have them. Chen Ji's eyes dimmed immediately before he asked in a low voice, who's he? It seems like he's also one of the people brought by a martial emperor from Cloud Continent to join the Hidden Fog martial competition. Senior brother Chen, you must seek revenge for us. Everything we've done is for your sake. That's right, senior brother Chen, you must take revenge for us. The two middle-aged men chimed in one after another. At this moment, the two Hidden Fog Island's inner island disciples said whatever that came to their minds. They told Chen Ji everything for the sake of pulling him into this mess. Although they were confident Chen Ji would definitely be interested in the two women, they were not certain if Chen Ji would kill the purple-clad young man, Duan Lingtian, who crippled their dantians. Due to this reason, they deliberately tried to enrage him. They only hoped that Chen Ji would kill Duan Lingtian the moment he laid eyes on him. Otherwise, Chen Ji might show mercy if the two women interfered. This was something they were unwilling to see. Who dares to trample on my head on this tiny piece of land in Hidden Fog Island? Chen Ji smirked. After finding out about Duan Lingtian's identity, Ka, and Li Fei, he charged out and vanished into thin air before the two middle-aged men's eyes. It caused their body to tremble in excitement. When they exchanged glances, they could both see the joy in each other's eyes. They knew very well that Chen Ji had gone to look for Duan Lingtian and the two ladies. This time, that Duan Lingtian will definitely die. As for the two bitches, they'll definitely become senior brother Chen's toys soon. Ha 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 ha, one of the middle-aged men threw his head back, laughing. His laughter was wanton and unrestrained. It's such a pity that both our cultivation bases are crippled, otherwise, I'd love to see how our senior brother Chen kills Duan Lingtian. Oh, and also how the two bitches get treated like a slave by senior brother Chen too. The other middle-aged man chimed in with a nasty look in his eyes. After leaving the eastern island, Chen Ji instantly went to the southern island and landed at the residence where the Yuhan Valley's people were residing ever since they arrived with Martial Emperor Yuhan. Only he knew what his next course of action was. Meanwhile, in a forest along the coast of the northeastern side of Hidden Fog Island, a wooden house was quietly being erected there. The wooden house was being erected at a very fast speed. Soon after, it was completely built. The people who built the wooden house were a man and two women. As the saying went, a job would be easy if both men and women worked together. The wooden house being built in such a short period of time was the best example. Both man and women's efficiency when working together was relatively high too. The three of them were none other than Duan Lingtian and his two fiancés, Ka and Li Fei, who had just left Hidden Fog City not too long ago. Now we only need a bed. Duan Lingtian flashed a naughty smile as he glanced at Li Fei and Ka. Just as the two women turned uncontrollably red after listening to his words, he immediately left. Naturally, he did not leave for good. He only left in search of wood to make a bed. Soon after, the bed was completed and was thrown inside the wooden house by Duan Lingtian. In the next instant, with one hand on Ka and another on Li Fei, he flew swiftly inside the wooden house. As the wooden house's door closed behind them, a series of creaking sound began to reverberate from inside continuously. It sounded as though they were going to break the bed. The creaking sound continued on until evening. In fact, it did not show signs of stopping even when midnight arrived. The sound only stopped when morning arrived. Inside the room, on the spacious bed, Duan Lingtian, who was almost drained, hugged both women in each of his arms and fell asleep. After being in a frenzy for a day and a night, he was not the only one who was exhausted. Even the two women were exhausted as well. The three of them slept until the morning of the third day. They had slept for an entire day and night. When Duan Lingtian woke up, he did not let go of the two sheep beside him. He transformed into a wolf again, and he was in a frenzy the entire morning. He was venting his lust that he had been suppressing for many years. Naturally, the lust that had been suppressed for so many years could not be easily vented just like that. In the end, Duan Lingtian finally let the two women go for the time being after they pleaded with him. There are still 2 months to go before the start of the Hidden Fog martial competition. Stay with me during this period of time. As for Martial Emperor Yuhan, don't go there for the time being, Duan Lingtian said to the two women before he made a move to leave the wooden house. However, he soon realized how unnecessary his words were. Before he could finish his words, the two women had already returned to their slumber. It was obvious that they were completely worn out. As the saying went, there are only tired cows but no worn plowed fields. However, it seemed like the current situation was the opposite in Duan Lingtian's case. After leaving the wooden house, Duan Lingtian headed to Hidden Fog City. He was at Hidden Fog City again after a few days, but he did not stay for long. After buying the various ingredients he needed, he left Hidden Fog City again. It only took him an hour to enter and leave Hidden Fog City. In this short span of 1 hour, he had a lucrative harvest. This Hidden Fog Island is really a treasure island. All of the rare treasures on Cloud Continent are being sold at a clearly marked up price, Duan Lingtian mused on the journey back home. Naturally, he was not surprised the Hidden Fog Island was rich in resources. He had long guessed there was a supreme-grade origin stones reserve hidden underneath the Hidden Fog Island. Due to this reason, the cultivation environment on Hidden Fog Island was a lot superior to any places on Cloud Continent. That supreme-grade origin stones reserve must be hidden underneath the east side of the Hidden Fog Island where the eastern island is located. It was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to come to that conclusion. Soon after, Duan Lingtian returned to the wooden house. The wooden house was built in a secluded forest and was next to the boundless sea. Very few people would make a trip here. After Duan Lingtian returned to the wooden house and saw that the two women were still sleeping, he did not disturb them. Let me refine the Profound Monarch Pill first, he thought to himself as his heart jolted. The Profound Monarch Pill was a pill refined from the 10,000 years red fruit. It could help a martial monarch raise his cultivation base swiftly. Duan Lingtian had already obtained the 10,000 years red fruit long before he entered Lost Stone Forest for Feng Tian Wu's sake and lost his memory. Unfortunately, before he could combine it with other medicinal materials to refine it into the Profound Monarch Pill, he had suffered a catastrophe and even lost his memory. He only recovered his memory a few days ago. Now that he had regained his memory, he seized the idle time he had to refine the Profound Monarch Pills. I only need one Profound Monarch Pill at most to help me break through to the Martial Emperor stage. The others would be enough to help Ka and Little Fair to break through to the Martial Emperor stage. Duan Lingtian's heart leapt when he was refining the Profound Monarch Pills. He also decided on the distribution of the Profound Monarch Pills. He only had one 10,000 years red fruit in his hand. Due to this reason, he could only make a cauldron of Profound Monarch Pills. Although a cauldron of Profound Monarch Pills had a pill-forming success rate of 100%, it could only create 10 pills at the most. Slap. After a period of time and a series of cumbersome actions, Duan Lingtian placed his hand on the cauldron. It caused the cauldron to shake violently as it emitted a faint sound. Swoosh, 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 comma. In the next instant, 10 pills flew out of the cauldron before it was caught by Duan Lingtian. Those were the Profound Monarch Pills. After the Profound Monarch Pills were successfully made, Duan Lingtian realized the two girls were still sleeping, so he did not disturb them. Instead, he swallowed one of the Profound Monarch Pills and prepared to cultivate. At the same time, he placed the other 9 Profound Monarch Pills by his side and left behind a voice transmission jade slip next to it. He had recorded a message inside using his own voice transmission. After that, he began to cultivate 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, the Divine Dragon Form. With the help of the Profound Monarch Pill's medicinal efficacy, Duan Lingtian could clearly feel the medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill stored deep in his dantian was activated again and merging with his origin energy to help him raise his cultivation base swiftly. Currently, his cultivation base was already at the 9th level Martial Monarch stage. Apart from the reconstruction after the destruction factor, the reason his strength was rising so fast was due to the rebirth pill's tyrannical medicinal efficacy. Now that his cultivation base had reached such a level, there was not much of the medicinal efficacy from the rebirth pill left in his body. By the time I break through to the Martial Emperor stage, the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy would most likely be gone. Duan Lingtian had already mentally prepared himself for this. He lost track of time in the midst of his cultivation. Nobody knew how long had passed when a faint sound resonated from Duan Lingtian's body, and he opened his eyes. His eyes gleamed like the stars in the night sky. If someone who was familiar with Duan Lingtian was here at this moment, he would instantly notice the differences in the current Duan Lingtian. More precisely, his temperament had undergone a transformation. Martial Emperor stage. I finally broke through to the Martial Emperor stage. After a long time, Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses. His face was filled with joy. The Martial Emperor stage. Currently, Duan Lingtian had officially entered the world of martial emperors. He was no longer a martial monarch whose strength was equivalent to a martial emperor. Enjoying the majestic origin energy that had undergone a change in his body, Duan Lingtian's emotions were in turmoil. He could not calm down for a long time. After 30 minutes, Duan Lingtian finally managed to calm his tumultuous emotion. When he regained his senses and looked at the two women, he noticed the two women had gotten up and were sitting on the bed cross-legged, cultivating with their eyes closed. They had completely entered the state of cultivation. Duan Lingtian saw that only 7 out of the 9 profound monarch pills that he left for the two women remained. Looks like they've heard the message I left behind in the voice transmission jade slip, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. When he left the profound monarch pills behind, he had also left a voice transmission jade slip to remind the two girls to consume the profound monarch pills and cultivate. Currently, I've already made a breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage and can solidify the royal grade weapon fire. In other words, I can refine the royal grade archery set now. At the same time, I can finally begin to cultivate the saint grade martial tactic, the colossal arrow light arrow. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, his emotions that only just calmed down began to stir again. Chapter 1280. Previously, when Duan Lingtian went to Hidden Fog City, he had already obtained most of the ingredients needed to refine the royal grade spirit weapon. Along with the ink steel, the refining material he had obtained in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure that was left behind by Martial Emperor Qingfeng, he could now refine the royal grade bow and arrow. I wonder how long I spent cultivating this time. Duan Lingtian did not rush to craft the royal grade spirit weapon. Only after he had walked out of the wooden house and checked the killing formation he had set up in the surroundings that he finally left, feeling at ease. The killing formation was set up when he and the two women built the house previously. The killing formation was potent enough to kill a person below the 7th level martial monarch stage. Even if someone above the 7th level martial monarch stage but below the martial emperor stage entered the killing formation, he would be severely injured if not dead. It was due to the existence of the killing formation that Duan Lingtian dared to go to Hidden Fog City to procure the materials needed to refine pills and weapons when the two girls were sleeping that day. Duan Lingtian went to Hidden Fog City again. The reason he went to Hidden Fog City was to inquire about the date of the Hidden Fog martial competition. 40 days later, soon after, Duan Lingtian found his answer. Looks like I cultivated for over a month, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. He still remembered when he reconciled with the two women, there were still 2 months and 20 over days left before the Hidden Fog martial competition began. However, there were only 40 days left now. This meant that a month had gone by. Subtracting the few days he spent in bed with the two women, he had used about a little more than a month to cultivate. After Duan Lingtian confirmed the time, he left Hidden Fog City again. On the way back, as though he was reminded of something, he let out a long sigh. The medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill is fully gone now. Currently, the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy was no longer in his dantian. To be more precise, it was completely depleted. Throughout his entire journey, it was all thanks to the rebirth pill that his cultivation speed was able to progress so swiftly. Now that the rebirth pill was gone, he could not help but feel a little dejected. However, his attention quickly shifted to another place. Right now, I've broken through to the Martial Emperor stage, and I can solidify the royal grade weapon fire now. According to the rebirth Martial Emperor's memory, it'll be easy for me to refine a royal grade spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian was certain about this. The rebirth Martial Emperor was originally a powerful royal grade weapons craftsman. He, who had merged with the rebirth Martial Emperor's memory, was equivalent to the reincarnation of the rebirth Martial Emperor when he refined a weapon. There was no pressure nor was it difficult for him at all. However, according to the rebirth martial emperor's memory, he had never refined any bow or arrow that were higher than the quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. The best bow and arrow he had refined was only a grade 1 spirit weapon. Even the bowstring of the grade 1 spirit weapon used, damn it. Then, does this mean the cow tendon from the cow-type void transformation stage demon beast was the bowstring of a mere grade 1 spirit archery set? From the rebirth martial emperor's memory, Duan Lingtian quickly discovered that the cow tendon he had bought to fashion the bowstring was a mere grade 1 spirit archery set's bowstring. There were 3 main components on the bow and arrow. First, the bow must be strong. Second, the arrow must be excellent. To Duan Lingtian, these 2 were not difficult. He just needed to refine them like how he normally refined spirit weapons. Third, the bowstring. Previously, due to the memory of the grade 1 archery set the rebirth martial emperor had refined, Duan Lingtian went to buy a cow tendon in Hidden Fog City. He went to more than 10 shops just for the sake of that cow tendon. The cow tendon was not an ordinary cow tendon. It was the cow tendon from a 9th level void transformation stage cow-type demon beast. It was extremely rare. Although there were many 9th level void transformation stage demon beasts, not every part of its body could be used as materials for the bowstring. According to the rebirth martial emperor's memory, only the cow tendon of a cow-type demon beast or the dragon tendon of a dragon were suitable as materials for the bowstring. The cow-type demon beast could still be found easily. Dragons, on the hand, were beasts with a vague and unreal existence. Naturally, it did not necessarily have to be tendons from a divine dragon. Even those worm dragon that a snake transformed into had dragon tendon in its body too. Although it was slightly inferior, it was still much stronger than the cow tendon. The weakest worm dragon is at the demon monarch stage at least. Those strong ones are at the demon emperor stage. Their strength is so powerful that ordinary demon emperors can't compare to it. Duan Lingtian learned many things from the rebirth martial emperor's memory. For example, once a serpentine demon beast made a breakthrough to the void transformation stage, it would undergo a transformation and become a pseudoworm. However, it would still be serpentine in nature. Only when it had broken through to the martial monarch stage, it would transform into a true almighty worm dragon. Only a worm dragon could be considered as a dragon. Naturally, it was only a low-rank dragon. In front of the pressure from a true divine dragon, it was only like an ant. When the worm dragon is at the martial monarch stage, it's called a silverworm. Once it has broken through to the martial emperor stage, it'll undergo another transformation and become the goldworm. Once a worm demon emperor transforms into its original state, it'll become a worm dragon that's fully covered in dazzling gold scales. Its dragon horn, in particular, appears as though it's made from gold. Duan Lingtian learned all of this from the rebirth martial emperor's memory. The rebirth martial emperor had gone through 2 reincarnations and had seen the true form of a worm dragon once. It was a silverworm that he encountered at sea outside of Cloud Continent. If I use the rebirth martial emperor's weapon refining experience as a guide, I need to use the cow tendon of a void transformation stage cow-type demon beast to make the bowstring of a grade 1 archery set. To make the bowstring for a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon or a royal grade spirit archery set, I'll need to use the tendon of a demon beast that's at the martial monarch stage at least, regardless if it's the cow tendon of a cow-type demon beast or the dragon tendon of the worm dragon. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he immediately felt a wave of headache. Putting aside how rare the worm dragons were, even a cow-type demon beast at the demon monarch stage or above was extremely rare. During the 2 reincarnations of the rebirth martial emperor, he had only encountered 1 worm dragon. As for cow-type demon beasts at the demon monarch stage or above, he had only encountered 3. Fine, let's just give it a try first. Duan Lingtian felt extremely vexed. He shook his head. He planned to refine the bow first. After that, he would decide if the cow tendon was usable or not. Perhaps, the royal grade spirit archery set that I refine can compensate for the complication caused by the grade 1 bowstring. At that time, if it can be considered as a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon after I assemble them, I'll just use it as it is. Duan Lingtian made mental preparations. Even if it was only a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon, it could be considered as stepping into the threshold of a saint weapon. It would be enough to help him cultivate the saint-grade martial tactic, colossal arrow-light arrow, that his miserly father left him. After returning to the wooden house, Duan Lingtian left again after he took a peek at the 2 women who were still cultivating. Compared to pill refining, weapons crafting would cause a larger commotion, so he needed a larger space. After all, pill refining was carried out in a cauldron. Even if there was a huge turmoil in the cauldron, the calmness of the outer world would not be affected at all. However, weapons crafting was different. Pissed. Standing outside the wooden house, Duan Lingtian raised a hand. A dazzling golden flame appeared and shone so brilliantly like the blazing sun. It was particularly stunning. The golden flame began to burn wildly, causing the surrounding air to become hot instantly. Gusts of wind blew past and turned into hot air that made one feel like one was in a sea of fire when it swept past. The flame on Duan Lingtian's hand was none other than the royal-grade weapon fire. It was the royal-grade weapon fire that could refine royal-grade spirit weapons. The moment the royal-grade weapon fire appeared, Duan Lingtian's eyes turned solemn immediately. With a lift of his hand, the materials emerged one by one before they were devoured by the royal-grade weapon fire one after another. All of the ingredients, including the ink steel that he obtained in the martial emperor's secret treasure, vanished in the royal-grade weapon fire that surged up without warning. The royal-grade weapon fire seemed to have transformed into a flaming behemoth that devoured everything into its stomach. Time continued to pass by quietly. An hour quickly went by. This time, beads of sweat began to form on Duan Lingtian's forehead. Although he had merged with the rebirth martial emperor's memory, it was not easy to refine a royal-grade spirit weapon. This was true even for the rebirth martial emperor. Duan Lingtian would naturally feel pressured. Fortunately, due to the fact that he had completely merged with the rebirth martial emperor's memory, it was similar to the rebirth martial emperor refining the weapon himself. Due to this reason, it did not pose a problem for him. Another 2 hours had gone by. Finally, it's beginning to melt. Duan Lingtian's gaze was like a torch as he glared fixedly at the royal-grade weapon fire that surged from his hand. At this moment, he could clearly see the last material in the royal-grade weapon fire had begun to melt. The material was none other than the ink steel. The ink steel was a necessity to refine a quasi-royal grade or royal grade spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian found out through the rebirth martial emperor's memory that if he used the quasi-royal grade weapon fire, it would take him 3 days and 3 nights to melt the ink steel. However, it would only take him a few hours if he used the royal grade weapon fire. Under the burning of the royal grade weapon fire, the ink steel finally began to melt. Another hour had gone by, the ink steel finally turned into liquid. With Duan Lingtian's skillful weapon crafting method, the ink steel turned into liquid and merged with the liquid that was formed by the other materials. The following steps were much easier. With the assistance from the royal grade weapon fire, a royal grade spirit bow and arrow began to take form. Another half a day had gone by. The shape of a bow and arrow were finally molded into their final forms under the touch of the tyrannical royal grade weapon fire. When the royal grade weapon fire was extinguished, the bow and arrow gradually descended and fell into Duan Lingtian's hand. Whether it was the bow or the arrow, they were both completely black. No luster could be seen at all. They were as black as ink even under the sun. Neither luster nor reflection could be seen at all. The fact was Duan Lingtian had intentionally crafted it to be like this. The most powerful advantage of a bow and arrow was it could catch the opponent by surprise, particularly in the night. A bow and arrow that could not reflect the moonlight would definitely be the best killing weapon.